Have you ever wondered what peace truly looks like in the bustling world of Norse mythology? Beyond the Valkyries and the mighty battles, there lies a hidden tale of a goddess finding profound rest. Join us as we uncover Freyja's gentle slumber, a journey into dreams of prosperity and an escape from the usual epic sagas. This isn't just a story, it's an invitation to tranquility. It begins with a question that has echoed through the halls of Norse legends for centuries. Why would Freyja, the goddess of love, beauty, and war, the most desired of all deities, choose to weep tears of pure gold? The answer is far more complex than a simple story of a missing husband. It is a tale of profound cosmic sorrow, a burden so heavy it forced a goddess into a slumber from which she might never wake. As the ancient sagas tell, her weeping was not merely a sign of sadness, but a creative act that seeded the worlds with a beauty born from despair. But you probably want to believe what you are about to hear, because the truth suggests that her tears were not just for her lost love. OPR, but for every love that has ever been lost, a weight she chose to bear alone. So, before the tension gets too high, take a moment to like the episode and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I love seeing where these stories reach, so feel free to post your location and local time in the comments. It's a wonderful way to feel connected across the miles. Now, close your eyes, imagine the ancient mountains, and let's unravel this epic tale together. The air in your small wooden cabin smells of pine, resin, and cold ash from last night's fire. Outside, a persistent autumn rain drums against the thatched roof, a rhythm that has lulled you for days. Your world has become this room, this chair, and the single object resting on the heavy oak table before you. It is a piece of amber, the size of a human heart, a relic passed down through your line for generations. Its origins lost to all but the faintest of family whispers. They called it the sorrow of the Vanir, a name that meant little until this morning. Now it commands your entire existence. You sit, unmoving, watching it. The first time in your life, the amber is weeping. A single, perfect tear of liquid gold wells up from a tiny fissure on its surface, clings there for a heart-stopping moment, shimmering in the gloom, and then traces a slow, viscous path down its curved side. It is impossibly beautiful and deeply wrong. The gold is not the cold, hard metal of commerce or kings. It moves with the warmth of living blood, pooling at the base of the amber heart in a tiny, glistening puddle. You dare not touch it. An ancient taboo, a half-remembered line from your grandmother's cautionary tales, surfaces in your mind. Oaths live in the cut. But sorrow lives in the gold. You never understood what it meant. You do now. The sorrow in this room is a physical presence, a pressure against your ears, a cold weight settling in your chest. You are the keeper of this strange heirloom. That is the only clear part of your inheritance. The duty came with an unspoken oath, a sense of responsibility you absorbed as a child watching your father polish the amber with a soft, woolen cloth on the solstice eve. He never told you why. He only said, "Watch over it." It watches over us. But it was never meant to do this. The legends tied to Freyja and her golden tears were just stories, part of the rich tapestry of Norse mythology you enjoyed on cold nights. They weren't supposed to manifest on your table. Another golden tear emerges, then another. They flow faster now, carving new, shimmering paths over the old. The puddle at the base grows, its light casting a warm, flickering glow that pushes back against the gray twilight filtering through the window. The drumming of the rain outside seems to fade, replaced by a low, resonant hum emanating from the amber heart itself. It is a sound that feels both like a lament and a summons. You feel a pull, a deep instinctual urge to answer a call you cannot quite hear. The world outside the forest, the village, the entire kingdom feels distant and dreamlike. This room, with its weeping relic, has become the center of the 9 realms. The amber is not just an object, it is a key, a conduit. You realize this with a certainty that chills you to the bone. Its weeping is a symptom of a sickness far away, a distress call from its original owner, the goddess Freyja. The whispers of myth become a roaring in your ears. Freyja, the leader of the Valkyries, the master of the powerful magic of seer, has fallen silent. Her vibrant life force, which nourished the very concepts of love and beauty, is fading. And this relic, this solidified piece of her ancient grief for her lost husband, is your connection to her. The unspoken oath of your ancestors was not merely to guard a treasure, it was to stand ready, ready for what you were never told. But as you stare at the growing pool of liquid gold, a terrifying and profound purpose begins to dawn. You are being summoned to her side. But where does a goddess go when she wishes to hide from the world? You do not stand so much as drift, as if the chair, the hearth, and the amber heart slide away on quiet rails. The rain's rhythm becomes the scrape of skis over frost, then the deep breath of wind sweeping a meadow no map can hold. Pine shadow gives way to an endless gold-green plain gleaming with dew as fine as ground metal. From horizon to horizon, a chorus of skylarks traces filaments of sound through the cold morning air. You know this place from the oldest strands in Norse legends and from the hearthside stories of traders and warriors. It is Folkvanger, the field where half of the fallen heroes come, the other half bound for Odin's hall. That division so calm in the telling feels like a living law under your boots, a stern fairness inscribed into the soil. It is quiet. It is unnervingly quiet. Ahead, a hall rises with the unhurried authority of a mountain that remembers when the sea first bowed to it. Sessramner's broad roof is shingled with overlapping bronze plates, aged to a sea-green bloom. Each plate is punched with a small hole, and the wind plays them like 1,000 flutes. Cedar pillars as thick as oaks hold the eaves. Every pillar is carved with ribboning vines, Valkyrie wings, boar tusks, and knotwork that leads your eye into labyrinths you cannot finish. The smell is salt, incense, and old wool and iron left to cool to slowly. Bells hang at the lintels, iron on iron, dark and heavy yet none of them ring. A murmur passes through the meadow, a pressure on the ears, and then the unmistakable note of a vow resting in the air like a drawn breath. You step to the threshold. The doors are open, but not welcoming. Each plank is stitched with hundreds of tiny scratches, like the resting marks of cats' claws. A small, almost funny memory pricks your mind. In songs, Freyja rides a chariot drawn by cats. And there, as a hearth-keeping superstition whispered in fisher villages from Hildisvíni to the islands that a cat, as whiskers will sing like a harp string in her presence whenever a lie is spoken. The thought curls into a rule at the tip of your tongue, and without knowing why, you leave your name on the grass outside. Some halls do not like true names crossing first. Inside, the space is wider than it appears from the meadow. The ceiling is painted in an auroral sweep of green and violet, a night sky caught mid-ribbon. Rows of tables line the floor, benches set with cups that still hold half-swallowed reflections of faces that are no longer here. A spear stand leans by the wall. Its shafts are bundled with red-dyed leather, still faintly warm with the touch of hands that will not return today. Shields polished to hard moons hang in slow arcs. The silence has layers. You can hear the flutes of the roof plates above, the wind's long exhale through arrow slits, the soft pad of your own breath. And underneath it, a hush that is not absence but constraint, the silence of a word held on a tongue too hot to speak it. You move between the tables, reading the inscriptions cut into their edges. They are not names, but proverbs and fragments of hymns. Oaths live in the cut. Love wears a sword scar without complaint. When stars shift, grief shifts with them. A strange comfort threads your chest. This is a hall built for both feast and wake, for tenderness set beside iron. It is a hall where deities and mortals share the same table if the law permits. Yet the law has wrapped itself in a sleep-thick blanket, and nothing stirs. Sessramner's high dais waits at the far end, a flat, low platform inlaid with amber and obsidian, a mosaic of storm and sun. A boar-shaped brazier squats to one side, tusks curving like sickle moons, charcoal cold. You smell cedar smoked long ago, and something faintly sweet like honey pulled through a brine. The whisper of the amber heart returns a hum behind Bonand. Your fingers tingle. You touch the mosaic's edge and feel the world quiver. She is there. Freyja lies upon a low couch of woven wool and fox fur, her hair a spill of ripe wheat and copper, braided with small beads of Baltic amber. A thin circlet rests upon her brow, and for a moment you think it is Brísingamen itself. But the famous necklace, so vital in every telling of ancient mysteries, is not at her throat. The absence is a hole your eyes fall through. Her lips are parted, breath moving, but slow as tides under ice. Along her cheekbone glitters a thin, unbroken line of gold, tear hardened into a track as delicate as a spider's silk. It does not flake. It does not move. It simply is, a golden sentence without a verb. You speak her name in your chest and feel the hall tighten. Your tongue is a stone. You try to step closer, and the floor hums warningly. There is a threshold inside the hall, another law inside the law, and you have not paid. Your unspoken oath stirs like a sleeper turning, and your grandmother's caution returns with razor clarity. Watch over it. It watches over us. The amber heart now is a dull heat in your pocket. You pull it free. It is heavier here, as if the field and hall and the space that keeps them apart have settled inside it. You hold it near the golden tear on her cheek, and for a heartbeat the hum resolves into a chord too pure to endure. A cold wind threads the hall, though no door has moved. The brazier as ashes shift into a pattern you recognize from stories as much as from a strange winter night. When you watched a wise woman mark a floor with chalk and bone sear. In the old sagas, this magic was Freyja's gift to the Aesir, a weaving of fate. And perception, the art of sending, seeing, untying, and binding again. In some tellings, Odin learned it from her, and paid for it with shivers that never left his spine. A king's price for sitting in women's circles. The ash pattern curls into a spiral that seems to deepen as you look, each ring a turning that could be a road or a snare. Sessrunar's benches creak in a windless room. Somewhere above, one iron bell gives a single, small sound, like a drop of water consenting to fall. You kneel and trace the outermost ring of ash with 2 fingers. It is not cold. It is the exact warmth of a hand you remember holding and losing. For a second, you are in 2 halls. This one, with its sleeping goddess and unspeaking weapons, and the little cabin you left. Rain at the roof, panache breathing into your clothes, the oak table and altar you had not known you built. The seam between them thins. There are marks near the spiral's heart faint, like a pencil against wool. You lean closer. The marks are not runes you can read, but they have rhythm. They look like the bead sequence on Brísingamen, and the spaces between them have weight. You understand the demand not in words, but in the spread of your ribs around your lungs. To follow a goddess into her slumber is to leave something at the door that you will never carry out again. A small sacrifice might not open the way. A large one might snap the thread. The law is precise, even in dreams. You glance back at Freyja. Her hands are folded, roughened not by work but by war, by reed grip on spear, bowstrings, nip swords, backlight vibrating through tendon. You remember that she chose half the fallen not because she preferred blood, but because love has to carry what it claims, even when it claims grief. You feel a pang that is almost worship, almost fear. Your own name sits in the grass beyond the threshold, safe for now. But what will you give up before you can even ask her a question? Far up in the painted sky, a bright smear where a constellation should be has been carefully erased. In Greek mythology, a guide might point you to Elysium and call this a cousin to paradise, but in Norse legends, fields like these are not endings. They are choices arranged as tables and benches, spears and cups, laws and whispers. You stand under the gaze of deities and of the dead, and the only sound is the breath of a sleeping goddess and the message in the ash. The fluted roof sings a little, as if urging you on. You hold the amber heart over the spiral, and droplets of gold sweat from it, not falling, but slowly unstring from their own weight, joining the ash and turning it the color of late afternoon. Your heart hammers. Somewhere in your memory a cat's whisker hums. Somewhere in this hall a gate you cannot see takes a thin, experimental breath. You straighten, and the hum in your bone becomes a question mark. At the very edge of hearing, something like a voice threads the flutes of the roof and the iron bell's patience. A counsel, or a warning, or a price list recited by the wind. You do not yet understand its tongue. The spiral waits. The hall holds its breath. If the pathway into her slumber must be walked by seer and sacrifice, what can you offer that opens the door without closing you forever behind it? The air grows thick, heavy with the scent of ozone and melting gold. You kneel before the seer spiral, a pilgrim at a forgotten altar. The golden tears from the amber heart are no longer dripping. They are being drawn out, stretching into shimmering threads that weave themselves into the ash, turning the dull gray pattern into a circuit of liquid light. The hum deepens, a vibration that runs up your arms and settles in the base of your skull, shaking loose the boundary between what you know and what you feel. The laws of Sesrumner, which had held you at a distance, now converge on this single glowing point on the floor. You are no longer an intruder, you're a participant. The spiral seems to breathe, its light pulsing in time with your own frantic heartbeat. It is asking for payment. Not in coin, or blood, or promises, sir, is a far older and more intimate magic than that. It is the art of weaving and unweaving fate, and it demands a thread from your own tapestry. A disembodied understanding flows into you from the glowing sigil. To enter a slumber born of absolute sorrow, you must leave a piece of perfect, untarnished joy at the threshold, a toll of equal and opposite weight. It is a terrifyingly elegant and cruel equation. You close your eyes and your mind becomes a frantic library, pages flipping as you search for a memory pure enough to serve as currency. It must be something without a shadow, a moment so bright it has no dark edges. A lover's first kiss? No, that is tangled with the eventual ache of separation. The pride of a finished craft? No, that is tied to ego. It must be simpler. You find it, a memory from childhood. You are sitting on a sun-warmed pier, small legs dangling over the water's edge. Your father is beside you, and he has just handed you a perfectly carved wooden bird. Its wings are smooth, its beak sharp. The memory isn't the bird itself, but the overwhelming, its uncomplicated feeling of being loved, of being safe in the warmth of the summer sun. A moment of pure contentment that you have carried your whole life without ever examining it. It is your anchor. The spiral seems to sense your choice. The hum intensifies, and you feel a strange, painless pulling from behind your eyes. As the seer magic takes hold, you feel the truth of the old warnings from Norse legends. This is the magic Loki once mocked Odin for practicing, calling it ergi, unmanly. Now you understand why. It is not weak. It is profoundly receptive. It does not take, it receives. Does not break, it unravels. There is a strange passivity in its power, a sense of being undone and remade by forces you can only invite, not command. It feels like leaning back into a deep well, trusting it will not be bottomless. You let the memory go. You offer it to the light on the floor. The sensation is of a warm thread being drawn from your core, spooling out of you and into the glowing ash. You feel the moment with your father recede, the image of the wooden bird fading, the warmth of the sun on your skin turning cool and distant. It is not forgotten, not yet, but it is no longer yours. It is now a part of the lock. Terrible emptiness blooms in your chest, a hollow space where that perfect joy used to reside. You have paid the price. The ancient Vavlor, the seeresses described by Roman historians as holding immense power among the Germanic tribes, would have held a staff for this. A cystopher often hollow and filled with psychoactive seeds and sacred charms to guide their journey. But you have only this amber heart, this condensed sorrow, and it pulls not on the wider world, but directly on you, using the sacrificed memory as its fuel. The spiral flares into a column of blinding golden light that consumes you entirely. The scent of pine and cold ash from your cabin returns for a split second, a final, fleeting anchor to your world. The stone floor of Sesselnor dissolves beneath you. Sound of the wind through the bronze roof plates becomes a rushing, liquid roar. You are not falling, but flowing, being poured from one reality into another. The last thing you see of the hall is Freyja on her couch, a solitary island in a sea of silence, the golden tear on her cheek seeming to shine with a faint reflected light from the joy you just gave away. Then all sensation ceases. For a timeless instant, there is nothing. No light, no sound, no self. Yes. You are simply a point of awareness adrift in a silent void. Then comes the grit. Fine, sharp texture materializes under your bare feet, and a sound. The slow, heavy drag of a wave pulling back from a shore. A smell salt, but a dry, metallic salt, like the scent of old blood. You open your eyes. You are standing on a beach under a sky the color of a bruised twilight. The sea before you is not water, but a vast, sluggish expanse of molten silver. And the beach, stretching as far as you can see in either direction, is not sand. It is made of infinite, glittering granules of pure gold. You are standing on a shore of golden tears. The realization settles not as a thought, but as a physical weight in your lungs. Every grain of sand beneath your feet is a solidified moment of Freyja's sorrow. ground down over eons into a glittering, desolate expanse. You lift your foot and watch as the golden granules cascade from your skin, catching the dim purple light of the twilight sky with a million tiny cold glints. The beach is silent, absorbing all sound. The waves of the silver sea make no crashing noise. They simply heave and withdraw with a soft, dragging hiss like a final exhausted breath. There is no wind, no seabird's cry, only the profound and unsettling quiet of a world built from a single, overwhelming emotion. You take a step, and then another. The golden sand is cool to the touch and unnervingly soft, molding to your feet before collapsing. It is like walking through a dune of memories, each step a trespass on sacred grief. You look down at your hands, expecting to see them changed, but they are your own. You are wearing the same simple tunic and trousers you had on in your cabin, now feeling impossibly plain in this landscape of mythic sorrow. The amber heart is gone from your pocket. The price of entry was not just the memory, but the vessel that brought you here. You are alone, with no key and no guide. The sheer scale of the place is terrifying. This is not just a dream, it is a realm, an entire psychic geography spun from the mind of a goddess. Looking back, there is no sign of your arrival. No glowing portal, no tear in the fabric of the sky. You simply are here as if you have always been here. The silver sea stretches to a horizon that seems to blur into the bruised heavens, offering no clue, no distant shore. Your only option is to walk the coastline. You pick a direction and begin. Your footsteps the only rhythm in this silent world. The sheer monotonous beauty of it is agonizing. It is a landscape of immense wealth and absolute poverty. Every grain is a fortune, yet there is no life, no water, no warmth. It is the ultimate expression of value rendered worthless by sorrow. As you walk, small details begin to emerge from the golden expanse. Half buried in the sand are objects that glitter with a different light. You kneel and brush the gold away from one. It is a single, perfectly formed seashell, but it is cast from solid silver, cold and heavy in your palm. A little further on, you find a string of pearls, each one a flawless orb of moonlight, but they crumble to dust the moment you touch them. These are the ghosts of gifts, the echoes of treasures offered to the goddess of love over millennia, now stripped of their meaning and left to erode in her sea of grief. Here lies the wealth of heroes, the dowries of queens, the heartfelt tokens of farmers and fishermen, all rendered into spectral debris. The sky above does not change. The twilight is static, a perpetual state of ending day that never fully yields to night. There are no stars, no moon. The only light comes from the faint, internal luminescence of the golden sand and the slow, heaving glow of the silver sea. It is a world without time, held in a single, unending moment of heartbreak. A bizarre detail catches your eye. In the distance, a small, dark object seems to be tumbling in the slow, soundless surf. You change your path, walking towards it, your heart hammering with a mixture of hope and dread. Any break in this gilded monotony is a potential signpost, or a potential trap. As you get closer, you see that it is a wooden cup, dark and waterlogged, rolling back and forth at the edge of the silvery tide. It is utterly plain, a simple, hand-carved vessel of the sort a common traveler might carry. As a wave of molten silver recedes, the cup is left momentarily on the golden sand. You reach for it, your fingers closing around the damp wood. It is real. It is solid. Unlike the silver shell or the dust of pearls, this object has retained its humble integrity. Inside the cup, a single drop of liquid remains, and it is not the silver of the sea. It is clear, like a droplet of pure spring water. You bring the cup to your nose. It smells of earth, of moss and damp soil. Scent so alien in this sterile, metallic world that it is almost painful. It is a fragrance of life, a memory of a world that is not this one, a single drop of water, an echo of a world that still knows rain. The sagas often speak of sacred wells and the magical properties of their waters. But here, in Freyja's dream of sorrow, a single drop of ordinary water feels like the most potent magic in the universe. Is this a clue or a cruel reminder of what has been lost? You hold the cup, the small, solid piece of reality, a small anchor in this ocean of despair. And then you see it. It's just beyond the waterline, half hidden in the golden glare. A footprint. It is not yours. The question hangs in the silent air, sharp and clear. Who else walks this shore of tears? The footprint in the golden sand is fresh, its edges crisp against the relentless grind of the grains. It is larger than yours, the imprint of a boot with a sole worn by long journeys over uneven earth. You crouch, tracing the outline with a finger, feeling the faint warmth that lingers where the sand has been compressed. It points inland, away from the silver sea, toward a low rise where the beach meets a barren plain. The discovery stirs something in you, a flicker of companionship in this vast isolation. Or perhaps the first whisper of danger. You straighten. Clutching the wooden cup tighter, its single drop of water sloshing like a promise. With no other path, you follow the track, your own steps overlapping the stranger's as you venture from the shore. The golden sand gives way to a harder crust, where the grains have fused into irregular slabs under some forgotten pressure. The air here is drier, carrying a faint metallic temps that clings to your tongue. As you crest the rise, the horizon unfolds into a desolate steppe, streaked with veins of darker gold that pulse faintly, like arteries in a colossal sleeping beast. No vegetation breaks the monotony. No rocks offer shelter. It is a landscape sculpted by grief, where every surface reflects the bruised twilight back at you in distorted, mocking waves. You pause, scanning for movement, and that is when you see it. A figure on the far edge of the plain, shimmering like heat haze over a forge. It stands motionless, a silhouette against the unchanging sky, tall and lean, cloaked in a simple traveler's mantle that billows without wind. The shimmer comes from within, as if the figure is woven from threads of captured sunlight, giving it an ethereal glow that makes the surrounding gold seem dull by comparison. You feel a pull, an instinctive recognition that roots you in place. This is no random wanderer in Freyja's dream realm. This is the first echo of OPR, her lost husband, the wandering god whose absence birthed her golden tears. In the Old Norse legends is a figure of profound mystery, a deity of frenzy and poetic inspiration, whose name evokes the wild fury that drives heroes to greatness or madness. He is the eternal traveler, forever chasing horizons that recede before him. Leaving Freyja to rule alone in Asgard and Vanaheim alike, you take a cautious step forward, and the figure turns its head slightly, acknowledging your presence without alarm. It does not speak, does not beckon. It simply waits, a silent invitation etched in the lines of its posture. As you draw nearer, details resolve from the shimmer. The cloak is of undyed wool, frayed at the hems from ceaseless roads. And beneath it, the figure wears boots of supple leather, etched with runes that glow faintly, symbols of safe passage and unbinding oaths. The face is obscured by a hood, but you glimpse a strong jaw and eyes that reflect the golden plane like twin mirrors, holding no depth, only surface gleam. This is an echo, not the god himself. A fragment spun from Freyja's longing, given form in her slumber. A quirky strangeness reveals itself as you approach. Ochre's echoes, in the whispered lore of the Vanir seers, carry a bizarre temperament tied to their wandering essence. They cannot lie, but they speak only in questions, their voices tuned to the pitch of distant thunder, rumbling low and resonant without ever forming a full statement. It is a rule of their nature, a safeguard against the deceptions that plague the realms of gods and mortals alike. You stop a respectful distance away, the air between you humming with unspoken expectation. The figure inclines its head, and from the hood comes the first sound you've heard since arriving, a low rumble, like stones shifting in a cairn. What path have you forsaken to walk this one? The question hangs, not demanding an answer, but inviting one. Its thunderous timbre vibrating through the ground and into your bones. You hesitate, the weight of your sacrificed memory pressing on you like an unseen hand. The echo of OPR does not press, it simply observes, its shimmering form flickering as if struggling to hold cohesion in this realm of solidified sorrow. You find yourself answering, the words tumbling out in the face of that patient gaze. You speak of the cabin, the weeping amber, the seer ritual in Sessrumnir. As you talk, the figure nods slowly, its questions interweaving like a gentle interrogation. What joy did the spiral claim from your heart? Why does a mortal bear the sorrow of deities? Each rumble pulls more from you, unraveling the threads of your journey without judgment. It is a sacred bargain of sorts, this exchange, no oaths sworn, no relics traded, but a quiet reciprocity that eases the isolation. In the ancient mysteries of Norse tradition, Oker's wanderings were not mere caprice. Historical accounts from medieval Icelandic sagas describe him as a lunar deity, his travels mirroring the moon's phases across the night sky, inspiring poets and warriors with fits of divine madness. Here in Freyja's dream, that inspiration manifests as these echoes, scattered like lunar shards across her inner landscape, each one a piece of the god she cannot reclaim. This first one gestures toward the steppe, pointing to a faint trail of darker gold that snakes into the distance. What calls you beyond the tears? It rumbles, and in that question, you sense the motif recurring, the pull of a threshold, the cost of pursuit. You follow as it leads, the echo gliding rather than walking, its form leaving no imprint on the sand. The plane begins to slope gently upward, the golden crust cracking underfoot to reveal deeper layers, like peeling back the strata of old wounds. The air grows cooler, carrying a whisper of distant bells, perhaps echoes from Sesramnir, far away. The shimmering figure ahead flickers more erratically now, as if the effort of manifestation drains it. You quicken your pace, a bond forming in the silence between its questions. This echo is a guide, an underworld companion in this psychic labyrinth, but its light is fading, pulling you toward whatever revelation lies at the end of this trail. As the path crests another rise, the echo halts, its hooded face turning fully toward you for the first time. The eyes within are not mirrors now, but windows to a starry void, hinting at the cosmic wanderings that define OPR. What will you trade for the sight of what was broken? It asks, the thunder in its voice softening to a murmur. The question lingers as the figure begins to dissolve. Threads of shimmer unraveling into the twilight air, leaving you alone once more on the edge of the plain. But in its wake, half buried in the darker gold, something gleams, a fractured clasp, ornate and familiar, pulsing with the same inner light that once defined Freyja's greatest treasure. You kneel in the darker gold of the path, the fading shimmer of OPR's echo still tingling in the air, like the afterglow of a distant fire. Your fingers brush away the grains, and there it lies, not just a clasp, but the legendary necklace itself, Brísingamen, the most coveted jewel in all of Norse legends. It is half buried, its chain coiled like a serpent in repose. Each link forged from the finest gold, hammered thin and etched with intricate knotwork that depicts lovers entwined in eternal embrace. The 4 great amber beads that form its centerpiece, each the size of a hennish egg and glowing with an inner fire, rest against the sand, their light muted as if exhausted from centuries of bearing witness to divine passions. But it is the clasp that draws your eye, fractured clean through. Its once magnificent mechanism now, a jagged ruin, dark and lifeless, as if the heart of the artifact has been poisoned. You lift the necklace carefully, the weight of it, surprising solid, substantial, like holding a length of sun-warmed chain from a smith's forge. The gold is warm to the touch, but uneven. The links near the clasp feel cold, almost brittle, as if the break has spread a chill through the metal. In the ancient mysteries of the Vanir deities, Brísingamen was no mere adornment. It was forged by 4 dwarven brothers in the depths of Svartalfaheimr, contributing a bead born from their own essence, one from the fire of creation, another from the earth's deep secrets, a third from the whispers of fate, and the last from the wild frenzy of love itself. Freyja traded for nights of her passion for it, a bargain that scandalized the gods and earned her eternal renown as both the embodiment of desire and a figure of unyielding strength. Heroes across the sagas sought its power, for it granted the wearer unmatched beauty and the favor of lovers, turning battles of the heart into triumphs as profound as those won with steel. As you hold it, a faint hum rises from the chain, a vibration that resonates in your chest, echoing the sorrow of the amber heart you left behind. The fractured clasp gapes like a wound, its inner workings exposed, tiny gears of blackened silver now seized and inert. And a central pin that should have locked with celestial precision but instead dangles loose, smeared with a residue that smells faintly of burnt incense and regret, It's a quirky detail from the lesser-known lore of these artifacts surfaces in your mind. Brísingamen. Its clasp was enchanted with a taboo of its own. It could only be opened by the touch of true, unselfish love, a rule so bizarre that even Loki, the trickster among deities, once failed to pilfer it because his clever fingers carried too much guile. The necklace would warm and yield only to purity, a safeguard woven into its dwarven craft that made it as much a test as a treasure. Here, in Freyja's slumbering realm, that taboo has twisted. The clasp does not merely refuse to close, it actively resists, the dark fracture pulsing with a subtle shadow that seems to writhe when you try to align the broken edges. You turn the necklace in your hands, watching how the amber beads catch the bruised twilight, casting fractured rainbows across the golden plain. The air around you thickens, carrying the scent of cedar smoke and distant thunder. Motifs from the old Norse legends that bind this dreamscape together. This is no accident of the sands. The necklace's presence here is a signpost, a cursed relic calling you deeper into the labyrinth of her grief. You recall the echo of OPR's final question: what will you trade for the sight of what was broken? And now you hold the answer in your palm. But repair is no simple task. The break is not just physical, it feels metaphysical, a severance in the very bonds of love that Freyja embodies. In the Icelandic Eddas, a historical compilation of oral traditions from the 13th century that preserved these tales for generations, Brísingamen's power was said to mirror the cycles of the Vanir gods, waxing with passion and waning with loss, much like the moon's phases that OPR was believed to command. Slipping the necklace around your own neck for safekeeping, you feel its weight settle against your skin, a comforting pressure laced with unease. The ambers warm slightly, as if recognizing a bearer, but the clasp's darkness tugs at the edges of your vision, whispering of costs yet unpaid. You rise and continue along the trail of darker gold, which now veers toward a faint tree line on the horizon, the first sign of structure in this endless plain. The path grows uneven, the fused slabs cracking underfoot to release puffs of golden dust that cling to your clothes like fine ash. The silence presses in, broken only by the soft chime of the necklace's links as you move. It is a sound of fragile beauty, a hymn fragment from the gods. Love's chain binds what fate would sever. As the tree line resolves into view, see that it is not a forest of living wood, but a grove of slender birches, their bark peeling in silver sheets that reveal veins of liquid gold beneath. The trees lean toward one another, branches interlaced like clasped hands, and from their trunks seeps a slow, amber sap that drips to the ground in heavy, tear-like drops. The air fills with a sweet, resinous perfume, undercut by the metallic bite of the plain. This must be the next threshold, a sacred space where sorrow takes root. You approach warily, the necklace humming louder now, its broken clasp seeming to point toward the heart of the grove like a divining rod. The birches rustle without wind, their leaves whispering in a tongue that feels like half-remembered oaths. You step among them, the ground softening to a carpet of fallen silver bark, and the world shifts subtly. The twilight deepens here, shadows pooling at the roots, and you sense eyes upon you not hostile, but watchful, as if the trees themselves guard secrets. One birch in particular stands apart, its trunk scarred with runes that glow faintly, depicting a boar in mid-charge. Hildisvíni, Freyja's faithful battle swine, a creature from the myths known for its unerring loyalty and ferocious protection. But this is no living beast. It is an inscription, a warning, or a guide. As you trace the rune with your finger, the sap from the tree flows faster, coating your hand in warm gold. The necklace responds, its ambers flaring briefly, illuminating a crossroads hidden at the grove's center, 3 paths diverging into deeper shadow, each marked by a different symbol: one, a wandering star, another a locked chain, the third a boar's tusk. The hum from Brísingamen crescendos, vibrating against your throat, and you realize the clasp's fracture is no mere flaw, is a key in need of mending, a puzzle whose solution lies beyond this grove. But which path to choose? The birches seem to lean in, their whispers growing insistent, echoing the oath you swore unknowingly in your cabin. You clutch the necklace, feeling the dark clasp's chill seep into your skin, a reminder of the blood price that miracles demand. In this realm of deities and ancient mysteries, every step forward exacts a toll from the soul. But as you stand at the crossroads, the ground trembles faintly, and from the shadows emerges a massive shape low to the earth, tusks gleaming like curved obsidian. It is Hildisvíni, or its echo, barring the way with eyes that burn like forge embers. The boar snorts, a sound like grinding stone, and you know passage will not be granted lightly. What riddle must you unravel to earn the right to proceed with this broken treasure in your care? You stand frozen at the crossroads. The necklace's broken clasp a cold knot against your chest, as Hildisvíni's massive form materializes fully from the shadows. The battle swine's hide gleams like polished bronze under the grove's dim light, its tusks curving upward in lethal arcs that catch faint glimmers from the birch's silver bark. Its eyes, deep wells of amber flecked with gold, fix on you with an intelligence that pierces deeper than any beast's gaze. A low rumble emanates from its throat, not a growl, but a vibration that stirs the leaves overhead, sending a cascade of silver flecks drifting down like metallic snow. The air thickens with the scent of damp earth and something sharper fermented honey, perhaps, or the temps of blood long dried. This is no mere animal. In the Norse legends, Hildisvíni was Freyja's faithful companion, a creature born of her seer magic, swift as the wind, and fierce as a storm, capable of carrying the goddess into battle or across the realms in pursuit of her wandering heart. The boar shifts its weight, hooves sinking into the golden carpet without sound, blocking all three paths with its bulk. It does not charge, it assesses. You sense the riddle forming before it speaks, a test woven into the fabric of this dream realm. What binds the wanderer to the hearth, yet sets the heart to wandering? The words emerge not from its mouth, but from the air around it, a chorus of whispers, layered like wind through reeds. Each voice carrying a different timbre, one youthful and eager, another weary and wise. You search your mind for the answer, drawing on fragments of myth, Oaker's eternal journeys, Freyja's unyielding love, the delicate balance that defines their divine union. Love, you venture, the word tasting like salt on your tongue. Hildisvíni tilts its head, tusks glinting, and after a long pause steps aside, revealing the central path, the one marked by the boar's tusk. Passage granted, but the riddle's echo lingers, a reminder of the costs in every sacred bargain. With the swine now trailing at a respectful distance, like a shadow guardian rather than a threat, you venture inland along the chosen path. The grove envelops you gradually, the scattered birches thickening into a proper forest, their slender trunks rising like pale sentinels etched with faint swirling runes that seem to shift when viewed from the corner of your eye. The silver bark peels in delicate curls, revealing inner layers that pulse with a subtle, vein-like glow as if the trees breathe in rhythm with the distant silver sea. The ground underfoot softens further, a mosaic of fallen leaves and bark that crunches faintly, releasing puffs of golden dust that swirl around your ankles before settling. Ow! No bird song pierces the canopy, no insects hum. Instead, the forest hums for itself a low, resonant thrum from the roots, like the earth intoning a forgotten hymn. As you press deeper, the birches grow taller, their branches arching overhead to form a natural vault that filters the bruised twilight into shafts of muted gold. The air cools, carrying a resinous perfume that clings to your skin, sweet and cloying, undercut by the metallic whisper of the sap, and then you see it, the weeping. From fissures in the bark, golden tears well up, not in drips, but in steady rivulets, tracing slow paths down the trunks like veins of liquid sunlight. The sap gathers in small pools at the base of each tree, where it hardens into amber nodules that crunch under your boots. It is the golden tears of myth made manifest, the very essence of Freyja's sorrow distilled into this arboreal cathedral. In ancient Norse traditions, birches held a sacred place among the Vanir folk, often used in fertility rites and as wands for seer practitioners. Local legends from the Scandinavian woodlands tell of priestesses carving oaths into their bark, believing. The trees absorbed the words and wept them back as prophecy under the full moon. You reach out, touching a trunk where the sap flows freely. It is warm, viscous, coating your fingers in a golden sheen that tingles like a mild current. The contact sends a shiver through the necklace at your throat. Brísingamen ambers flare briefly, syncing with the tree's pulse, as if recognizing kin. A quirky detail from the lesser lore of Freyja's artifacts emerges in your thoughts. The goddess' tears when they fell in the waking world, were said to possess an anomalous function tied to her dominion over love. They could mend broken bonds if offered freely. But if taken without permission, they bound the thief in eternal longing. Taboo that turned many a suitor into a wandering shade. Here in her slumber, the sap carries that same peril. As you withdraw your hand, a thin thread of gold stretches between your skin and the bark, snapping with a soft musical twang that echoes through the grove. Hildisvíni snorts behind you, urging you onward without words. The path winds deeper, birches closing in until the forest feels like a labyrinth of silver pillars, each one inscribed with faint epigraphs. When stars shift, grief shifts with them. Oaths live in the cut. These are the leitmotifs of fate, recurring like echoes of the Amberheart summons. The golden sap flows more profusely now, dripping from overhead branches and lazy curtains that you duck beneath, the droplets hissing faintly as they hit the ground and solidify. One lands on your shoulder, warm and heavy, seeping through your tunic to leave a sticky residue that smells of wildflowers crushed underfoot, a sensory creep that blurs the line between comfort and confinement. The forest's thrum grows louder, vibrating in your bones. You sense the birches watching, their leaves rustling in a wind you cannot feel. Further in, the path opens into a small clearing dominated by a colossal birch at its center. Its trunk as wide as 3 men, bark etched with a grander rune, a falcon in mid-flight, wings spread in eternal ascent. This must be a nexus, a sacred space within the sacred. The sap here pools into a shallow basin, its surface rippling like liquid gold under an unseen breath. Hildisvíni circles the clearing once, then settles at the edge, eyes half closed but alert. You approach the great tree, the necklace humming in harmony with the sap's flow. Kneeling at the basin's edge, you see your reflection distorted in the golden surface, not your face, but a fleeting vision of Freyja as you first glimpsed her in Sessrumnir, tear-streaked and serene. The sight tugs at the hollow where your sacrificed memory once lived, a blood price paid in joy for this deeper immersion. As you gaze, the sap begins to stir, forming eddies that spell out runes on the surface directions, perhaps, or warnings. One symbol stands out, a crossroads revisited, pointing toward a denser thicket beyond the clearing. The forest seems to hold its breath, the weeping slowing to a deliberate drip, each drop a soft percussion in the hush. You feel the pull of the next threshold, the recurring motif of choices laced with consequence. The boar stirs, its rumble a low affirmation. But as you rise to follow the implied path, a shadow flits through the branches overhead, not Hildisvíni's, but something sleeker, winged, vanishing before you can track it. The birches creak in unison, their golden tears flowing faster now, as if in response to an unseen omen. In this weeping grove where sorrow takes root and blooms in liquid gold, what hidden guardian stirs in the canopy above, watching your every step? The shadow in the canopy resolves into a fleeting dart of movement, but Hildisvíni's snort pulls your attention back to the ground. The battle swine rises from its watchful crouch at the clearing's edge, shaking its massive head with a sound like grinding millstones. Its tusks, curved and obsidian sharp, catch the golden light filtering through the birches, casting elongated shadows that snake across the sap basin. The air in the grove thickens, the resinous perfume turning heavier, laced with the earthy musk of the boar's hide. You realize now that the crossroads you glimpsed in the sap's runes was no mere suggestion. It manifests before you 3 paths diverging from the great birch's roots, each one hemmed by denser thickets of silver-barked trees. The central path, marked by the boar's tusk rune, beckons strongest, but Hildisvíni plants itself squarely across it, eyes burning with that forge ember intensity, barring your way like a living threshold guardian. You halt, the necklace's broken clasp pressing cold against your skin, a reminder of the relic's own fractured oath. The boar does not growl or charge, it simply regards you, steam curling from its nostrils in lazy spirals that dissipate into the humid air. This is the test you sensed earlier, the riddle promised in the whispers of the grove. In the Norse legends, Hildisvíni was more than a mount or a beast of war. It was a companion forged from Freyja's will, embodying her fierce protectiveness over love's fragile domains. Local legends from the fjords of Norway, passed down in skaldic tales recorded in the 12th century, describe how the swine could discern the pure-hearted from the deceitful, its bristles standing on end in the presence of broken vows, a quirk that made it an invaluable sentinel during the goddess's wanderings among mortals. What weighs heavier than the chain of gold, yet lighter than the breath of a lover's sigh? No. The riddle emerges from Hildisvíni's throat this time, a deep resonant bellow that vibrates through the earth, shaking loose a fresh cascade of golden sap from the overhead branches. The words hang in the air, each syllable dripping with the weight of heartbreak, echoing the leitmotifs of sacred bargains and cursed relics that have threaded your journey thus far. You feel the question burrow into you, demanding not just an answer, but a confession. The paths behind Eutha, one of the wandering star, and the locked chains seem to fade, their entrances tangling with vines of silver bark, leaving only the central way viable. The boar waits, unblinking, its bizarre temperament revealing itself in the way its tail twitches, not in agitation, but in patient rhythm, like a metronome counting the beats of your hesitation. In the esoteric lore of Freyja's artifacts, Hildisvíni carried an anomalous function tied to its creation. It could only pose riddles drawn from the goddess's own sorrows, each one a shard of her unhealed grief in answering, correctly granted not just passage, but a glimpse into her hidden pains, a double-edged boon that scarred the solver with borrowed melancholy. You pace the clearing's edge, the golden pools at your feet rippling with each step, reflecting distorted images of the boar and the paths. The riddle circles your thoughts, heavier than gold, lighter than a sigh. Memories surface, unbidden, the warmth of your father's hand on the pier, now a hollow ache since the seer took it. The echo of Okar's shimmering questions on the plain, the fractured clasp that defies simple mending. Gold represents the tangible weight of Freyja's tears, the chains of beauty and desire she forged with the dwarves. A lover's sigh is ephemeral, the breath of passion that binds without binding. What bridges them? Regret. The word forms on your tongue, heavy with the realization that it fits. Regret carries the burden of what was lost, yet it is as insubstantial as a fleeting remorse, weighing on the soul without form. Ret, you say aloud, the word cutting through the grove's hum like a blade. Hildisvíni's eyes narrow, then widen, a low rumble building in its chest that resolves into a snort of approval. The boar steps aside, hooves thudding softly on the silver-barked carpet, revealing the central path in full. But true to the lore, the answer's price follows swiftly. Vision blooms in your mind, unbidden and vivid. Freyja in a sunlit meadow of Vanaheim, her laughter ringing like bells as OPR clasps Brísingamen around her neck for the first time. The joy is pure, intoxicating, but it fractures as he turns away, his wandering nature pulling him toward the horizon. Her hand reaches out, the necklace's clasp glinting, and in that moment, a single tear falls, not gold yet, but the seed of endless sorrow. The vision fades, leaving you with a borrowed grief that tightens your throat, a scar on the heart from peering too closely into a deity's wound. You step forward, Hildisvíni falling in beside you like a steadfast companion, its presence a comforting bulk against the encroaching shadows. The path winds through the thicket, birches leaning closer now, their weeping sap forming natural archways overhead, dripping in rhythmic patters that sound like muffled sobs. The air grows cooler, the resin scent mingling with hints of smoke and wool, evoking the feasts of Sessrumnir far away. The ground slopes gently downward, the golden dust giving way to patches of damp moss that squelch underfoot, a sensory shift towards something more alive, more secretive. Runes etched into the trunks recur here, oaths live in the cut. A callback to the warnings that guided you from your cabin. As the path levels out, the thicket opens into a broader glade, where the birches form a loose circle around a low, long table, hewn from a single fallen trunk. It is set for a feast, but one long fated. Wooden platters hold crumbling remnants of bread turned to dust. Flagons overflow with evaporated wine that leaves stained rings like bloodied halos, and garlands of wilted wildflowers hang limp from the branches above. Chairs are drawn up, empty, save for faint indentations in the seats, as if invisible guests have risen only moments ago. The air hums with a different quality, now expectant, almost festive, undercut by the persistent drip of sap from the encircling trees. Hildisvíni settles at the table's end, tusks resting on the wood, and you approach warily, and the necklace at your throat, warming as if in recognition. Now, you take a seat, the wood creaking under you, and the glade seems to respond. Shadows at the table's edges coalesce into vague forms, shades with blurred faces. Their features smudged like ink in rain, dressed in tunics and cloaks from eras long past. They do not speak, but their presence fills the space with a chorus of silent murmurs. A feast of faded memories where the echoes of laughter and song play at the edge of hearing. One shade reaches for a platter, its hand passing through the dust without disturbing it, and you catch a glimpse of a face yours. Freyja's occurs, before it dissolves. This is a banquet of what was, a motif of star omens and lost loves, recurring in the very layout of the seats. Each one positioned to face an empty chair at the head, reserved for the absent goddess. The boar nudges your arm gently, its breath warm on your skin, and you realize the feast is not for consumption, but for communion. As you sit among the shades, the golden sap from the trees begins to flow toward the table, pooling in the flagons and staining the bread anew. The scents intensifier, oast meat that isn't there, spiced mead, fresh baked loaves, and for a moment. The grief from the riddle lifts, replaced by a poignant nostalgia. But the shades' blurred faces press in, their unspoken stories weighing on you like the regret you named. In this gathering of ghosts, what forgotten face at the table holds the key to mending what Brísingamen has lost? The shades at the feast table fade as the golden sap cools in the flagons, leaving behind a residue that crusts like dried honey on the wood. You rise from your seat, the borrowed grief from Hildisvíni's riddle settling into your bones like a persistent chill, making each movement deliberate and weighted. The boar stands beside you, its massive form a silent sentinel. Tusks glinting in the dim light filtering through the birch canopy. The blurred faces of the shades linger in your periphery, their unspoken yearnings pressing against the edges of your awareness. But the necklace at your throat demands precedence. Brísingamen Samber's pulse faintly, the fractured clasp tugging like a lodestone toward the denser shadows beyond the glade. You understand now, in the quiet aftermath of the ghostly banquet, that mending it is no idle task. It is the thread that will unravel Freyja's slumber. And the path to repair leads to those who birthed the treasure in the first place, the four dwarven smiths of Svartalfheimr. Hildisvíni nudges you forward with its broad shoulder. The contact warm and reassuring, guiding you from the clearing along a narrowing trail that descends through the birches. The grove's weeping slows as you go. The sap drips, echoing like fading footsteps behind you. The path twists downward, the silver bark giving way to rougher stone outcrops veined with obsidian. The air growing cooler and damper, carrying the faint echo of hammers on anvils from some distant depth. This is a descent into the underrealms, a motif of thresholds recurring as the world tilts toward shadow. The twilight above dims further, the bruised sky swallowed by overhanging roots that dangle like questing fingers. You clutch the necklace, feeling its chain warm against your skin, a callback to the sacred bargains of myth, where beauty always exacts a price. The trail opens abruptly into a vast canyon, its walls sheer cliffs of blackened rock that rise into an impenetrable gloom. A sunless void where no star omen pierces the perpetual night. The air here is thick with the acrid temps of forge smoke and molten metal, undercut by a deeper, mustier, scent-like regret distilled into vapor. Echoes bounce off the stone, the rhythmic clang of hammers, the hiss of quenching steel, the low mutter of voices arguing in guttural tongues. At the canyon's heart lies the forlorn forge, a sprawling cavern mouth aglow with the ruddy flicker of eternal fires. Anvils squat like ancient beasts, surrounded by heaps of slag and half-formed relic swords bent mid-curve, rings fused in eternal knots. But the fires burn low, their flames sputtering as if starved, casting long shadows that twist like tormented spirits. You approach warily, Hildisvíni's hooves clopping softly on the canyon floor, which is littered with shards of cooled lava that crunch like brittle bone. For figures huddle around the central anvil, their forms stunted and broad, clad in soot-streaked leather aprons, scarred by centuries of sparks. These are the smith dwarves, Valin, the eldest, with a beard like tangled iron wire. Brokkr his brother, eyes sharp as chisel points. The twins, Eitri and Andwari, their hands calloused into perpetual claws. In Norse legends, these master craftsmen forged not just Brísingamen, but Mjolnir itself. The thunder god's hammer, their skills born from the earth's fiery womb. Historical accounts in the Poetic Edda, a 13th century Icelandic manuscript that compiled ancient oral traditions, portray them as reclusive artisans whose forges powered the gods' armory, trading boons for secrets that mortals could scarcely comprehend. They look up as you enter, their faces etched with lines deeper than any rune, eyes gleaming with a mix of resentment and weary curiosity. What fool-bearer comes to our regret, clutching our finest failure? Dvalin growls, his voice like gravel under boot. You hold out Brísingamen, the clasps fracture, catching the forge light. At a collective murmur ripples through them. Brokkr snatches it, turning it over with reverent roughness, while Eitri peers at the break through a lens of warped crystal. And Dwari hangs back, muttering about old debts. They are trapped here, bound by the same sorrow that permeates Freyja's dreama self-imposed exile in this canyon since the necklace is forging, haunted by the bargain they struck with the goddess. For knights of her favor for 4 beads of power. A trade that birthed beauty but sowed discord among the Aesir, earning them Odin's wary gaze and Loki's schemes. The dwarves gather around a low bellows, pumping it half-heartedly to coax the fires higher. A quirky detail from the esoteric lore of their craft surfaces as they work. Brísingamen's clasp held an anomalous function tied to the dwarves' taboo. They infused it with a rule of equal exchange, where mending required not metal or magic, but a piece of the bearer's unspent regret. A bizarre temperament that made the artifact as much a mirror of the soul as a jewel. It would only seal if the offered emotion matched the fracture's depth, turning repair into a psychological forge where personal shadows were hammered into submission. The chain remembers, Brokkr says, heating the clasp in the flames until the gold glows cherry red. It broke when her heart did, in the wandering's wake. To fix it, you give what we cannot, your own unspoken loss. You hesitate, the borrowed grief from the riddle stirring within you, mingling with the canyon's oppressive air. Hildisvíni settles nearby, its presence a steady anchor as the dwarves chant a low, rhythmic incantation, their hammers striking in unison to shape a new pin from obsidian and amber shards scavenged from the walls. The forge roars to life, sparks flying like captive stars, illuminating inscriptions carved into the anvil. When stars shift, grief shifts with them. The heat builds. Sweat beating on your skin, and the necklace is passed back, the clasp softened, but waiting for your contribution. Dvalin nods gravely. Speak it, bearer. Name the regret that weighs your steps, or the chain stays sundered. The words rise unbidden, drawn out by the fire's hypnotic dance. You confess the hollow from the sacrifice memory, the pure joy of your father's gift. Now a void that echoes with what-ifs. The dwarves listen, hammers pausing, and as the confession spills, the clasp seems to drink it in. The dark fracture glowing faintly. Eitri applies the new pin with precise blows. Each strike resounding like a heartbeat, sealing the metal with a hiss that smells of burning vows. Dwari watches warily, his fingers twitching as if tallying the cost. The necklace cools in your hands, the clasp whole once more, its surface smooth and unmarred, the ambers blazing with renewed vigor. But the dwarves do not celebrate. Their faces darken, the forge fires dimming, as if the canyon itself sighs in relief for defeat. You've mended the chain, Brokkr says, but the path out demands more than craft. The river waits beyond. Gray and unyielding Hildisvíni rises, snorting agreement. And the dwarves retreat into the shadows of their forge, their forms blending with the slag heaps, trapped echoes in this sunless regret. Brísingamen back around your neck, its weight lighter now. But humming with the absorbed sorrow a traded memory for a goddess's boon, the blood price of miracles ever present. The canyon's echoes guide you to its far wall, where a faint archway reveals a sluggish flow of water, surface the color of storm clouds, lapping at the stone with a whisper that tugs at your resolve. In this forge of forgotten makers, where hammers beat out the rhythm of divine debts, what memory from the waking world will the river claim as you cross its waning currents? You stand at the archway's threshold. The canyon's forge echoes fading into a hollow hush behind you, as the river reveals itself in full. A sluggish ribbon of gray water that winds through the stone without vigor, its surface dull and unbroken by ripple or foam. The banks are fringed with jagged obsidian rocks, polished smooth by eons of indifferent flow, and the air above it hangs heavy, saturated with a damp chill that seeps into your bones. No birds wheel overhead, no fish break the surface. This is the River of Waning Hope, a boundary in Freyja's inner realms, drawn from the Norse legends of the underworld streams that separate the living from the lost. Hildisvíni halts beside you, its breath fogging the mist, tusks lowered as if in wary respect. The boar senses the river as taboo as keenly as you do a crossing that does not merely ford water, but tests the very moorings of your spirit. The necklace at your throat hums softly, Brísingamen's mended clasp warm against your skin. My life. It was I grinds as even by and get alright. I'm not gonna I'm gotten rich with I'm a breadwin rayer cause I bike when but I wagon him shouldn't have one by the way what should we wear what Sam showing what I was so was so it is so was it so. You feel the absorbed regret from the dwarf's forge pulsing within it, a living artifact now laced with your own confession. Stepping closer, you peer into the gray depths. They are opaque, swirling with faint shadows that suggest submerged forms' faces, drifting hands echoes of hope surrendered long ago. The water moves with a lethargy that mocks urgency, lapping at the banks in slow, deliberate kisses that erode the stone grain by grain. To cross is to invite its touch, for in the ancient mysteries of Norse deities, rivers like this one, kin to the gel that guards Hell's gates in the Eddas, demand a toll, not of coin, but of conviction. They wash away the anchors of the self, leaving the traveler adrift in the current's indifferent flow. You search the bank for a ford or bridge, but find only a crude raft of lashed cedar logs, half-sunk and tethered by frayed ropes woven from birch bark. It bobs listlessly as if waiting for the bold or the foolish. Hildisvíni snorts, circling the spot once before wading in up to its flanks, the gray water parting around its bulk with a reluctant hiss. The boar turns its ember eyes on you, a silent oath-keeper, urging commitment. No other path presents itself. The canyon walls loom impassable on either side, veined with the dwarf's forgotten runes. You untie the ropes, the fibers rough and damp under your fingers, smelling of resin and decay, a sensory creep that clings like a warning. Untying the last knot feels like severing a thread from your own resolve, a small blood price for the journey ahead. Pushing the raft into the current, you climb aboard with Hildisvíni, the logs groaning under your combined weight. A single oar lies across the thwarts, carved from pale ash wood and etched with faint spirals that evoke the seer patterns from Sessrumnir. You dip it into the water, and the first pull reveals the river Esquirk. Its gray surface clings to the wood like oil, drawing out tendrils that evaporate into mist, carrying with them whispers of doubt. This is the bizarre detail of the River of Waning Hope, a mythic artifact. In its own right, its waters do not drown the body, but erode the mind, selectively stripping memories of the waking world in proportion to their strength. In local legends from the Viking age recounted in sagas like the Valshamr, such rivers were said to serve the Norns, the Fate Weavers, who used them to temper heroes' ambitions, leaving them wiser but hollowed a taboo that forbade speaking of the lost recollections upon crossing, lest the waters rise in retribution. The raft drifts into the main channel, the current lazy but insistent, pulling you toward the far bank shrouded in thicker mist. You row steadily, each stroke sending a shiver up your arm as the water tugs at the oar, murmuring fragments of your past. The pine-scented cabin. The Amber Heart's first tear, Your grandmother's cautionary proverb, oaths live in the cut. These are not full memories, but echoes, fraying at the edges like old cloth. Hildisvíni stands firm at the prow, its hide steaming against the chill. A threshold guardian embodying Freyja's unyielding will. The river's banks recede, the obsidian rocks blurring into a monotonous gray, and the twilight above darkens to a starless void. No celestial signs to mark your progress. The air fills with a low, keening hum, like wind through a hollow reed, underscoring the isolation. As the crossing deepens, the water's assault intensifies. It splashes against the raft's sides, cold droplets striking your skin and seeping through your tunic, each one a pinprick that dissolves a sliver of certainty. You recall the echo of OPR on the Golden Plain, its shimmering questions now distant as a half-remembered dream. The sacrificed joy from the seer spiral feels even more remote, a void within a void. The river senses your faltering grip. Tendrils rise higher, brushing your calves where they dangle over the edge. And with them come visions fleeting star omens of your life before the summons. A village festival under summer skies, laughter shared with unnamed friends, the simple warmth of hearth fire on winter nights. Yeah, these are not threats, but seductions. The water offering to wash them away, promising lightness in exchange for forgetfulness. The taboo presses. To resist is to cling. To yield is to lose the self that brought you here. You lean into the oar, muscles burning. Hildisvíni's presence a steady anchor amid the swirl. The boar turns its head, rumbling low a sound like distant thunder, echoing Oker's voice from earlier trials. It reminds you of the recurring motif. Every river crossing in this labyrinth exacts a price, but yields a deeper truth. In the prose Ida Snorri Sturluson's 13th century retelling of Norse cosmology, rivers like these were integral to the world's structure. Flowing from the well of Ured, where the Norns watered Yggdrasil, infusing the cosmos with fate's inexorable flow. Here in Freyja's Slumber, the River of Waning Hope serves her own fate-weaving, stripping away the mortal illusions that obscured divine sorrow. The raft lurches as a stronger current grips it, spinning you sideways, and the water rises, lapping at the logs with greedy insistence. You fight the pull, reciting silent oaths to hold your ground, the cabin's amber. The dwarves forge, the necklace's mended clasp. Brísingamen flares against your chest, its ambers casting golden reflections on the gray surface, repelling the tendrils like light on shadow. The artifact's power surges, a sacred bargain renewed, drawing strength from the regret you fed it. The boar braces, tusks, dipping into the water without effect, its loyalty a bulwark against the erosion. Slowly, the far bank emerges from the mist, closer now, fringed with twisted willows whose branches droop like weary arms. The hum crescendos, the whispers peeking into a cacophony of lost hopes. Lovers parted, battles forsaken, oaths broken before fading as the raft grounds on the pebbled shore. You stumble off, legs numb from the cold, Hildisvíni shaking itself dry with a snort that scatters droplets like sparks. The river recedes behind you, its gray flow resuming its lethargy. But you feel the toll. Fragments of your waking world have slipped away, leaving gaps like missing teeth in a smile. The path ahead winds into a denser wood, shadows lengthening under a canopy that blocks even the bruised twilight. The necklace settles, its hum a quiet affirmation. You have crossed, resolve intact but thinned. Memories of home now spectral veils. But as you press into the trees, a new presence stirs in the underbrush, a malevolent whisper. Slithering like smoke, hinting at an ancient avarice that has tracked you from the canyon's depths. What shadow of old betrayals now stalks your trail across this waning shore? You push deeper into the wood beyond the river's far bank, the twisted willows giving way to denser undergrowth, where thorns snag at your tunic like insistent fingers. Hildisvíni forges ahead, its bulk parting the foliage with effortless strength. But the air feels charged now, heavier than the damp mist you left behind. The ground is uneven, roots snaking across the path like veins of petrified wood, forcing you to watch your steps amid the encroaching gloom. The necklace hangs steady at your throat, Brísingamen's ambers casting a subtle glow that illuminates the way in fleeting pulses, a beacon against the starless canopy overhead. The crossing has left you lighter, unburdened by those faded memories, yet a subtle hollowness lingers, as if the river of waning hope has carved shallow channels in your resolve, waiting to deepen with the next trial. The whisper begins as a faint rustle, like dry leaves skittering over stone, but there are no leaves here, only the persistent drip of moisture from the branches, echoing the birches weeping far behind. Pause, scanning the shadows, and Hildisvíni's ears twitch, its low rumble vibrating through the earth. The sound comes again, closer this time, a sibilant murmur that weaves through the thorns. Gold. Always gold. It is not wind, nor beast. It is a voice, fragmented and covetous, slithering along the ground like smoke-seeking cracks. The boar snorts sharply, circling you protectively, tusks lowered, but the whisper evades, circling just beyond sight. This is no random haunt. It is a presence, malevolent and deliberate, stalking you with the patience of ancient grudges. As you press on, the wood thickens into a labyrinth of gnarled trunks, their bark rough and etched with scars that resemble claw marks, as if the trees themselves had been raked by unseen furies. The air grows stale, carrying a faint, acrid, tang-like charred herbs mixed with the metallic bite of the golden plain. The whisper grows bolder, darting from shadow to shadow. She hoards, she weeps. But the fire claims all. It tugs at the edges of your awareness, stirring unease, a psychological tension that builds with each step. You clutch Brísingamen, its mended clasp firm under your fingers. And recall the dwarves' warning in the canyon. Every mend invites old debts. This shadow is tied to them, to the necklace's origins, a remnant of the avarice that birthed it. The presence manifests subtly, at first a flicker in the underbrush, a chill that raises the hairs on your arms despite the wood's humid embrace. Then you glimpse it, a formless silhouette, taller than a man but fluid, coiling around a trunk like inky vapor before vanishing. It whispers of Gullveig, the sorceress from Norse legends, whose name evokes the Vanaheim War. A figure of profound greed who thrice burned and thrice reborn, her avarice igniting the great conflict between the gods. In the Völuspá, the prophetic poem of the poetic Edda, 13th century, Icelandic text that preserved oral traditions from the Viking Age, Gullveig is depicted as a catalyst for divine strife. Her thirst for gold and prophecy driving the Aesir to spear her in Odin's hall, only for her to rise as Heid, the seeress of unrest. Local legends from the Swedish woodlands, where Vanir worship lingered, portray her as a wandering hag who tempted heroes with visions of wealth, her shadow lingering in places of buried hoards, whispering temptations that led to madness or doom. You quicken your pace, Hildisvíni matching stride, its presence a bulwark against the encroaching dark. The wood seems to respond to the shadow, branches leaning closer, thorns thickening into barriers that scratch shallow lines across your skin marks that sting like accusations. The whisper circles, now from ahead, now behind, the necklace, forged in fire. Mine by right. It is connected to Gullveig's ancient avarice, a spectral echo of her thrice-burned greed, drawn to Brísingamen like a moth to flame. The artifact's power, born from dwarven craft and Freyja's passion, mirrors her own taboo desires, pulling this malevolent remnant from the fringes of the dream realm. A quirky detail from the esoteric lore of such sorceresses surfaces in your mind. Gullveig's shadow carried a bizarre temperament, an anomalous function where it could not touch gold directly, but fed on the envy it inspired. Growing stronger by sowing discord in the hearts of those who bore treasures, a rule that made her the ultimate thief not of objects, but of harmony. The path narrows to a defile, walls of twisted roots closing in like a natural corridor, forcing you and the boar into single file. The whisper intensifies here, bouncing off the bark in a disorienting chorus. Fragments of prophecy and plea. Burn the chain. Share the gold. End the weeping. It presses against you, a cold pressure that seeps through your clothes, evoking the sensory creep of damp cedar and iron ringing under breath, the motifs of Freyja's sacred spaces, now corrupted. Hildisvíni charges forward suddenly, tusks scoring the air where the shadow coalesces briefly. A tendril of black smoke that dissipates with a hiss, leaving behind a faint scorch mark on the ground. The boar wheels back to you, eyes blazing, but the presence reforms elsewhere. Undeterred, its avarice a persistent itch in the back of your mind. You emerge from the defile into a small hollow, ringed by ancient oaks whose branches form a dome overhead, blocking the bruised twilight entirely. Moss clings to the trunks in thick, velvety cushions, glowing faintly with phosphorescence, casting the space in an eerie green-tinged light. At the center lies a flat stone altar, weathered and inscribed with runes that depict a woman wreathed in flames, her hands outstretched toward a gleaming horde. This is a shrine to Gullveig, or her echo, a cursed relic in the heart of Freyja's labyrinth. The whisper converges here, swirling around the altar like a vortex, the air humming with tension. Brísingamen flares hot against your chest, its ambers repelling the shadow. But you feel the pull of the artifact's beauty tempting, even as it protects, a sacred bargain teetering on the edge of betrayal. Kneeling at the altar's edge, compelled by an unseen force, you trace the runes and visions flicker. Gullveig in Odin's hall, her eyes alight with prophetic greed demanding gold from the Aesir, her burning the acrid smoke of her rebirth. The war that followed rivers of blood for her insatiable hunger. The shadow presses closer, whispering temptations tailored to your hollowed memories. Give the chain, ease her sorrow. Claim the power for yourself, Hildisvíni stands guard, rumbling warnings, but the presence weaves between you, exploiting the gaps left by the river's erosion. In this wood of twisted oaths, the Avarice feels alive, a trickster's kin without Loki's wit, pure, unrelenting want. You rise, backing away from the altar, the necklace's glow steadying your resolve. The shadow recoils slightly but does not retreat, trailing you as the hollow gives way to a steeper path ascending through the oaks. The whispers fade to murmurs, biding time, but their presence lingers like a stain. The leitmotif recurs. Every guardian in this realm escalates the trials, demanding choices with consequential prices. The boar nudges you upward, toward whatever threshold awaits, but the shadows of Avarice clings, a malevolent companion in the gloom. As the path climbs, the oaks thinning to reveal a faint glow, a single feather, iridescent and fallen, pulsing like a captured star. But with the shadow at your heels, whispering of stolen flights, what price will the falcon's lost plume exact from a bearer haunted by greed's ancient flame? The path ascends through the thinning oaks, their gnarled branches clawing at the bruised twilight like skeletal hands, as the faint glow ahead sharpens into focus. Hildisvíni presses close, its flanks brushing yours in a rhythm of unyielding support, while the shadow of Gullveig's Avarice trails at a distance, its whispers reduced to a persistent hiss that slithers through the underbrush. The air up here is thinner, carrying a crisp edge that bites at your lungs, mingled with the faint musky scent of feathers and distant wind-swept moors. Brísingamen hums against your chest, its mended clasp a steady warmth that counters the chill. But the necklace feels heavier now, as if the shadow's greed has latched onto its power, tugging subtly with each step. You emerge onto a narrow ledge overhanging a sheer drop, the wood's labyrinth falling away below into a misty chasm. And there, caught on a thorn bush at the ledge's edge, lies the feather. It is no ordinary plume. It's iridescent and long, spanning the width of your forearm. The feather shimmers with the hues of a falcon wing deep, russet at the base fading to silver tips that catch the dim light like frost on steel. It quivers slightly as if alive with captured flight, and you recognize it instantly from the Norse legends. A single quill from Freyja's falcon feather cloak. The Valshamr, the artifact that allowed her to soar between the 9 realms in disguise, evading the watchful eyes of gods and giants alike. In the prose, Ida Snorri Sturluson's 13th century guide to Norse cosmology drawn from older skaldic traditions, the cloak is described as a gift from the dwarves, woven from the molted feathers of sacred day, falcons in Vanaheim, enabling Freyja to spy on her wandering husband. OPR, or intervene in mortal affairs without revealing her divine form. Local legends from the coastal regions of Norway where falconry was a revered art among Viking chieftains held that possessing even a single feather granted the wearer the bird's keen sight and swift escape, but only if earned through a trial of pure intent. You reach for it carefully, thorns scraping your palm, drawing thin lines of blood that well up like crimson oaths. The feather comes free with a soft snap, warm in your hand, its barbs rustling like silk against wind. Holding it, you feel a surge of lightness in your limbs, a sharpening of your senses that pierces the wood's gloom. The shadow recoils audibly, its hiss sharpening to a wail as the feather-esque glow repels the inky tendrils creeping up the path. Hildisvíni stamps its hoof, approving, and you understand the purpose. This is the key to escape. Not just the canyon's echoes from earlier, but this very wood, where Gullveig's avarice has woven its snare. The Valshamr's plume carries Freyja's essence, a threshold guardian in feather form, allowing flight from perils that ground lesser travelers. A quirky detail from the artifact S-lore surfaces as you examine it. The falcon cloak S feathers held a bizarre taboo tied to their anomalous function. They could only grant flight to one who whispered a vow of secrecy upon claiming them, a rule that silenced the bearer's voice mid-journey if broken, turning triumphant escapes into mute descents into isolation. In Freyja's hands, the Valshamr allowed her to slip into Asgard unseen, but for mortals or lesser gods the feathers demanded silence as payment, their texture humming with a sound like distant wing beats that echoed only in the holder's mind. Or bring the feather to your lips, murmuring the oath. By the winds of Vanaheim, this flight remains unspoken, and the plume responds at silver tips, flaring brightly, infusing your skin with a tingling energy that lifts the hairs on your arms. The shadow surges then, emboldened by the moment of vulnerability, coiling up the ledge like a living smoke, its whispers of frenzy, the feather, ... the gold. All mine to burn, Gullveig's echo lashes out, tendrils whipping toward the plume, but Hildisvíni charges, tusks slicing through the vapor with a crackle like splitting ice. A boar bellows, a thunderous call that shakes the thorns loose, and you seize the instant, pressing the feather to your shoulder. The world tilts. A rush of air envelops you, not a gale but a gentle uplift, as if invisible wings unfold from your back. Your feet leave the ground, the ledge receding below, and you soar upward, the wood's labyrinth shrinking to a tangled web beneath. Hildisvíni follows in a bound, its form blurring into a streak of bronze and shadow, leaping from root to branch with supernatural grace, keeping pace as your unlikely steed in this aerial escape. Flight in the dream realm is no effortless glide. The air resists, thick with the residue of sorrow, and the feather's power demands focus. You angle higher, the bruised twilight parting to reveal a starless expanse above. No omens to guide, but the recurring motif of eclipse's shadows of Gullveig's avarice, chasing like dark birds below. The whispers pursue, fainter now but insistent, echoing up from the chasm. Return, share the flight, and the horde. Brísingamen pulses in rhythm with the feather, its ambers sinking to amplify the ascent, a sacred bargain between artifacts that weaves their powers into one. The sensory details assault you, the rush of cool wind whipping your hair, the faint screech of the plume's barbs vibrating like harp strings, the distant rumble of the river's gray flow far below. This is the sonic texture of sacred spaces, iron ringing under breath transformed into the whoosh of wings cutting fate's weave. As you climb, visions flicker at the edges of sight, fragments of Freyja's flights, her cloaked form diving over Midgard's fjords, spying on lovers' quarrels, soaring to Alfheim to bargain with elves for lost secrets, always returning to Sessrumnir with news of Oker's wanderings, her heart heavier each time. The feather shares these glimpses, a price for its boon, etching them into your mind like stone-cut epigraphs. When stars shift, grief shifts with them. The shadow thins below, Gullveig's echo dispersing into harmless wisps, its avarice starved by the distance. Hildisvíni leaps alongside, its eyes locked on yours. A bond forged in the Trialza underworld guide, now turned to aerial companion. The ascent levels out, the wood giving way to an open expanse under the perpetual twilight. A vast moor dotted with standing stones that rise like forgotten sentinels. You descend gently, the feather's power ebbing as your feet touch heather's soft ground. The plume dimming but not fading, tucked now into your belt like a talisman. Hildisvíni lands with a thud, shaking the earth and sniffs the air, alert to new thresholds. The moor stretches endlessly, its surface undulating under a sky devoid of stars. The eclipse motif lingering in the unnatural dark. The necklace settles, its hum a quiet lullaby. But the flight has shifted something within you, a heightened awareness of the labyrinth scale. The costs of each miracle mounting like traded memories. You press onward across the moor, the standing stones looming closer. Their surfaces inscribed with runes that glow faintly, symbols of fate weavers and oath keepers, recurring leitmotifs that promise deeper trials. The air here is still, broken only by the soft pad of Hildisvíni's hooves and the rustle of the feather against your side. No immediate peril stalks you now, but the silence feels watchful, as if the moor itself breathes with Freyja's unspoken burdens. In this elevated realm, reached by wing and will, what oracle awaits among the stones to reveal the slumber's self-imposed chains? You pause amid the standing stones on the moor, the feather from the Valshamr still warm in your belt, its iridescent barbs catching faint glimmers from the runes etched into the monoliths. Hildisvíni grazes nearby, its massive head lowered to the heather. But its ears flick toward the horizon, sensing the same unrest you feel, a subtle shift in the air, like the gathering of an unseen storm. The moor stretches out in all directions, a vast, undulating plain under the bruised twilight that refuses to yield to true night. The stones form irregular circles, their surfaces cool and musk-covered, scribed with faded symbols of spears and ships, echoes of heroes long vanished from the sagas. Brísingamen rests heavy at your throat, its clasp a steady pulse that syncs with your heartbeat, a reminder of the dwarves' forge and the regrets traded there. The shadow of Gullveig has faded entirely, its avarice scattered by the flight, but the silence here feels deeper, more profound, as if the world holds its breath before a revelation. You draw the feather again, pressing it to your shoulder as before, and the uplift returns a gentle buoyancy that lifts you from the ground. The moor shrinking below, like a woven tapestry of green and gray. Hildisvíni bounds upward in tandem, its form blurring into a streak of bronze muscle and tusk, leaping across the heather with impossible strides that keep it level with your ascent. The Valshamr's power courses through you once more, wings of invisible air unfolding, carrying you higher into the dream sky. The wind rushes past, cool and insistent, carrying the faint, salty tang of distant seas and the earthy musk of the boar's hide. This is no mere escape. It is navigation, a deliberate crossing of the celestial threshold, where Freyja's slumber has rewritten the heavens. As you climb, the starless sky unfolds in its eerie vastness. The familiar constellations of Norse legends, the wagon of the gods, the great bear that Odin hunts eternally. The ship of Freyja herself have vanished, erased as if a divine hand swept them from the vault. In their place stretches an empty expanse, a void pricked only by faint erratic flickers like dying embers, no patterns to guide or omen to interpret. The darkness presses in, not absolute but oppressive, a psychological tension that builds with the altitude, making your breath come shorter. You bank left, following an instinct drawn from the feather's hum, plume vibrating against your skin like a compass attuned to lost winds. Below, the moor gives way to jagged peaks and shadowed valleys. The labyrinth of Freyja's inner realms sprawling like a map of unhealed wounds. Hildisvíni's leaps mirror your flight to bore a steadfast shadow below, its snorts carrying up as faint echoes in the thin air. The absence of stars feels like a taboo broken, a deliberate unweaving of fate's threads. In ancient Norse traditions, the night sky was a living chronicle of heroes and deities, with constellations like Orvindil's toe, said to be the frozen toe of a legendary warrior flung by Thor serving as celestial signposts for seafarers and skalds alike. Historical accounts from the 9th century traveler, Ahmad ibn Fadlan, who documented Viking burial rites along the Volga, describe how Norsemen invoked these star omens during voyages, believing them to be the souls of fallen warriors guiding the living through tempests. Here, in Freyja's dream, those lights have been quenched, perhaps by her own sorrow, leaving the sky a blank slate where no oath-keeper's vow can find direction. The feather compensates, its silver tips glowing brighter, illuminating swirling currents of air that twist like rivers in the void-light motifs of crossings recurring even in the heavens. A quirky detail about the Valshamr emerges as you navigate. Freyja's cloak, in the lesser-known Vanir lore whispered among seer practitioners, carried feathers with an anomalous function tied to the goddess's temperament. It could alter the bearer's perception of time during flight, stretching moments into eternities or compressing hours into heartbeats. A bizarre rule that once caused Odin to age a year in a single sore when he borrowed it, his one eye widening in perpetual surprise thereafter. You feel it now, the sky's vastness compressing around you, the wind's rush slowing to a deliberate caress that allows glimpses into the void. Fleeting visions of RS wanderings, his silhouette against phantom stars, always one horizon ahead. The feather demands focus. Stray thoughts invite turbulence, gusts that buffet you sideways, testing the resolve the river thinned. You adjust course, diving toward a cluster of clouds that part like veils, revealing a rift in the sky, a yawning gap where constellations should blaze, edged with faint golden threads like frayed tapestry. The hum from Brísingamen intensifies, sinking with the feather, drawing you toward it. Hildisvíni veers below, circling the base of a towering spire that juts from the landscape, its peak piercing the rift. This is no random tier. It is a starless scar, a motif of eclipses and sacred bargains, where the vanished hero's lights have bled away into Freyja's grief. The air thickens with sensory creep-cold vapors coiling like incense smoke. The distant ring of iron bells from unseen temples, whispers of proverbs carried on the wind. Oaths live in the cut. The flight escalates the trials, the void pressing with psychological weight, as if the absent stars judge your worthiness to pierce this celestial labyrinth. Emerging from the clouds, you spot the spire clearly, a colossal tree, root, massive and knotted, thrusting upward like the arm of Yggdrasil itself, phantom branches curling into the rift. It is not the world tree in full, but an echo. A dream fragment where roots delve into the moor's depths and crown the sky. The feather pulls you downward, spiraling toward a hollow at the spire's base, where the bark splits into a cavernous maw, dark and inviting. Hildisvíni lands first, vanishing into the opening with a snort, and you follow, the uplift fading as your feet touch mossy ground within. The feather dims, tucked away, but its visions linger Oker's eternal flight mirroring your own, a callback to the plane's shimmering echo. Inside, the root cavern descends into a chamber lit by bioluminescent fungi clinging to the walls, their glow casting the space in ethereal blue. The air is cool and earthy, scented with damp cedar and faint incense, the sonic textures of sacred spaces amplified in the enclosed hush. At the center squats a figure, hunched and veiled, staff in hand of Valva, the oracle seer, her form an echo drawn from Freyja's seer essence. She stirs as you enter, her voice a rasp like leaves over stone. The sky weeps its lights as she weeps her gold. What bearer seeks the roots of self-forged chains? Hildisvíni settles nearby, watchful, as the Viviva's eyes milky and unseeing fix on you, piercing the gloom with prophetic weight. The oracle leans forward, staff tapping the ground in rhythmic incantation. And the chamber responds. Roots overhead creak like ancient beams, fungi pulsing in time. She speaks of Freyja's slumber, not as defeat, but as a prison of her own weaving, self-inflicted exile, to spare the realms her unending grief. The vanished stars a veil to hide her from Odin's gaze. The Viviva's words weave the tale. After countless searches for OPR, the goddess turned inward, her tears solidifying into barriers that even Loki's tricks cannot breach. Brísingamen, mended but burdened, is the key, but only if the bearer confronts the wargown's eternal fight. The air hums with tension, the recurring motif of fate weavers surfacing in her gestures, each tap a thread pulled from the void. As the Valva falls silent, a vision blooms in the chamber's glow. Freyja armored not in beauty, but in iron and regret, battling shadows of lost loves in endless cycles. The oracle's staff stills, her milky eyes narrowing, in this phantom root of the world tree, where skies go dark and oracles unveil truths. What vision of the goddess's warrior burden will demand your next sacrifice to unravel her cage? The Viviva's staff taps once more, final punctuation that sends ripples through the chamber's blue glow. And the roots overhead creak in response, parting like curtains drawn by unseen hands. You stand transfixed in the heart of the phantom Yggdrasil, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and smoldering herbs as the vision unfolds, not in your mind alone, but in the space before you, a living tapestry woven from the fungi's light and the oracle's murmured chant. Hildisvíni shifts at your side, its warm bulk a grounding presence amid the unfolding spectacle, tusks glinting like curved blades in the ethereal illumination. Brísingamen pulses against your chest, its amber syncing with the root's subtle vibrations, drawing you deeper into the seer's revelation. The slumber's truth hangs heavy. Freyja has imprisoned herself not in chains of gold, but in the endless cycle of her own battles, a self-inflicted exile, where every victory sows the seed of the next loss. The chamber blurs at the edges, the blue glow intensifying to a crimson haze. and you find yourself no longer in the root hollow, but on a mist-shrouded battlefield, the ground churned to mud under iron-shod boots. The air reeks of sweat and scorched leather, undercut by the metallic tang of blood that has long since dried into the earth. Thunder rolls in the distance, not from Thor's hammer, but from the clash of shields and the roar of warriors locked in eternal strife. You are a spectator, unseen and untouched, yet the chaos presses close the sensory creep of cold steel scraping bone, the damp chill of fog that clings to your skin like regret. This is Freyja as warrior, not the veiled lover of the meadows, but the chooser of the slain. Her Valkyrie aspect unbound, armored in a war gown that shifts and regenerates before your eyes, a living relic of her unyielding dominion over both love and war. She strides through the fray, Freyja the Vanir goddess. Her form towering yet graceful, hair unbound and whipping like flames in the wind. Her war gown is no static mail. It is a masterpiece of dwarven craft. Forged from links of blackened iron, interwoven with threads of golden wire, echoes of her tears, hammered thin and resilient. The gown flows like liquid shadow over her shoulders, singed at the waist with a belt of boar-tusk clasps that rattle with each step, a nod to Hildisvíni's kin. But its true power reveals itself in the battle-less fury. As an enemy blade glances off her side, the gown tears. Links parting with a shrill snap, only to knit back together in moments, iron reforming from the ether, golden threads weaving anew, like veins pulsing with divine will. It regenerates eternally, a bizarre detail from the esoteric lore of Freyja's artifacts. This war gown, known as the Fjardan's Veil in Vanir hymns, carried an anomalous function tied to her temperament. It could not be destroyed. But each regeneration demanded a fragment of the wearer's joy, a taboo rule that turned prolonged fights into slow erosions of the soul, leaving the goddess scarred not in flesh, but in spirit. You watch as she engages a phalanx of spectral foe shades of fallen heroes, their faces blurred like the feast's guests, wielding axes that whistled through the mist. Freyja moves with predatory elegance, her spear a blur of silver that pierces shields and armor, each thrust a sacred bargain with fate. Life claimed for the fields of Folkvanger. Oaths live in the cut, she intones, her voice a calm thunder that cuts through the din, a memorable line etched into the gown's belt like a stone-cut epigraph. But victory comes at cost. As the shades fall, their essences dissolve into the mud, and the gown regenerates again, faster this time, greedily pulling at her. You see it in her eyes, the subtle flicker, a traded memory, a dimming of some long-held warmth, the blood price of miracles manifesting as a fleeting shadow across her features. These are battles already lost, echoes of wars she fought in the waking realms, the Vanaheim conflict, where her magic tipped the scales, but birthed lasting rifts. Skirmishes against giants who coveted her beauty. Even the quiet wars of the heart duels with Ochre's absence that left deeper wounds than any blade. The vision shifts, the battlefield compressing into a ritual circle, ringed by standing stones akin to the moors, where Freyja pauses amid the carnage. She kneels, not in defeat, but in contemplation, her hands tracing the gown's regenerating links. The iron hums under her touch, a sonic texture of sacred spaces, iron ringing under breath, amplified by the fog's hush. In this moment, you glimpse the psychological intrigue. The gown is no mere armor. It is a metaphor for her burden, eternally mending to fight phantoms of regret, each cycle weaving tighter the prison of her slumber. Local legends from the Icelandic sagas, such as those in the Heimskringla, compiled by Snorri Sturluson in the 13th century, describe Freyja leading Valkyries in the aftermath of the Gyrvania War, her war gown stained with the blood of kin. A historical fact woven into the myths that portrays her as both unifier and divider, her regenerative power a double-edged sword that healed alliances but hollowed her own heart. Hildisvíni's distant snort pulls at the vision's edges, grounding you, and the Volva's voice overlays the scene like a confessional whisper. I have seen her thus, in dreams that bleed into waking, eternal warrior. Forever scarred, the boar in the vision appears at Freyja's side, not the echo you travel with, but a spectral twin, nuzzling her hand as the gown fully reforms, golden threads gleaming anew. She rises, spear in hand, but her gaze turns inward, toward a horizon where stars should shine but do not, a call back to the navigated sky, the vanished omens of heroes lost to her grief. The battlefield fades, the crimson haze receding, and you are back in the root chamber, the fungi's blue light steady once more. The Valva leans on her staff, milky eyes distant, as if the vision has drained her too. You touch Brísingamen, feeling the clasp's warmth echo the gown's regeneration. A parallel that stirs unease, the necklace mended with your regret, now linked to this endless fight. The oracle nods, sensing your turmoil. The war gown binds her to battles of the past, regenerating to relive what cannot be undone. To free her, you must seek the library where loves go to wither. Each tale a weight on her crown, Hildisvíni rises, nudging you toward a tunnel branching from the chamber, its walls veined with glowing roots that pulse like the gown's golden wires. The air shifts, carrying a musty scent of aged parchment and ink, mingled with the faint, sorrowful perfume of wilted rosisa, threshold to deeper sorrows. The vision lingers in your mind, Freyja's unyielding form a haunting silhouette, her war gown, a symbol of the costs she bears alone. The recurring motif of cursed relics presses, every artifact in this realm demands consequence, scars traded for strength. As you step into the tunnel, the roots closing behind like a labyrinth's door, the Viva's final words echo. When stars shift, grief shifts with them. The path descends gently, the blue glow fading to warmer amber tones ahead, promising archives of the heart. But in the wake of this warrior's eternal burden, what forgotten love story in the library's tomes will reveal the key to lightening Freyja's self-woven chains? The tunnel's amber glow guides you downward, the roots' veins pulsing like the golden threads of Freyja's war gown, each step echoing softly against the earthen walls. Hildisvíni's hooves clop in steady rhythm beside you, a reassuring counterpoint to the lingering chill of the vision, the goddess's spear thrusting through spectral foes, her armor knitting itself whole at the expense of unseen joys. Brísingamen sways gently at your throat, its clasp a subtle anchor, humming with the absorbed regrets that now feel like shared scars. The air shifts as you descend, growing drier and cooler, laced with the musty perfume of old paper and faded ink, a scent that evokes forgotten attics in your distant cabin. The tunnel opens abruptly into a vast chamber, not a cavern, but a library, its shelves rising into shadows that swallow the ceiling. An endless archive carved from the dream realm's depths. You step into the hush, the floor a mosaic of polished obsidian tiles etched with faint rune symbols of intertwined hearts and shattered chains. Recurring motifs of love's fragile oaths. Hildisvíni pauses at the threshold, its ember eyes scanning the gloom, as if wary of the intangible weights hidden here. The library stretches in all directions, aisles branching like the roots of Yggdrasil, lined with shelves groaning under tomes of every size, leather-bound volumes with spines cracked like old bones, scrolls coiled in obsidian cases, tablets of clay inscribed with wedge-like script from realms long merged.
There's no lantern's burn.
The light emanates from the books themselves, a soft golden luminescence that spills from their pages, casting the space in a perpetual dawn. This is the Library of Lost Loves, a repository of every tragic romance from the 9 realms, each story a fragment of Freyja's heart, collected in her slumber as both burden and balm. You wander the nearest aisle, fingers trailing the shelves, and the books respond, leather warming under your touch, spines whispering faint sighs like wind through cedar boughs. The air hums with quiet tension. The sonic textures of sacred spaces transformed, pages rustling like distant waves, bindings creaking like temple bells in fog. One tome catches your eye, its cover embossed with a silver swan gliding over a fjord. You pull it free, the weight surprising dense as a hero's shield, and open it to a page that unfolds like a map of sorrow. The words are in runes, fluid and alive, recounting a tale from Midgard. A Viking chieftain's daughter promised to a rival jarl for peace, who instead follows her heart to a wandering skald. Their love ending in a storm-tossed shipwreck under star omens that promised union but delivered the sea's cold embrace. In Norse legends, such stories abound, mirrors to Freyja's own quests for OPR. where passion defies fate only to forge deeper chains. Deeper in, the aisles narrow, shelves pressing close like confidants sharing secrets. You find volumes from Alfheim, elves' silken bindings recounting romances severed by the light of dawn, lovers turning to dew under jealous moons. From Svartalfheimr dwarven grimoires, in hammered bronze detail, unions forged in fire but cooled by avarice. Echoes of the smith's regrets you witnessed. Even Jotunheim's tomes, bound in frost-rimed hide, speak of giantesses who loved Aesir gods, their embraces melting into glacial isolation. Each story carries Freyja's touch, a recurring epigraph in golden ink. When stars shift, grief shifts with them. These are the weights on her heart. Every tragic love, a thread in her self-woven prison, collected here as if the goddess, in her sorrow, became the ultimate oracle seer, hoarding the 9 realms' heartbreaks to spare them from the world. The library's scale is epic. A psychological labyrinth where heroes and deities alike find their passions reduced to ink, their ancient mysteries preserved in perpetual mourning. A quirky detail about Freyja emerges as you browse. In the Vanir traditions, her dominion over love extended to an anomalous function in such archives. She could summon echoes of the lovers from these pages not as shades, but as living illusions that reenacted their tales for the reader. A bizarre temperament that tempted the curious to relive joys and pains alike, but with a taboo the echoes demanded a kiss of farewell. Drawing a drop of the viewer's blood as price, binding the observer to the story's fate for a night and a day, you test it unwittingly, opening a slim volume from Vanaheim, its pages fluttering to a ballad of 2 deities, a harvest god and a seeress whose union bloomed in spring fields but withered under Odin's envious gaze. The air shimmers, and they appear, translucent figures dancing in a meadow that overlays the isle, their laughter ringing like chimes, hands entwined in eternal promise. Freyja's influence lingers in their grace, but the dance sours, the god fades into mist, the seeress weeping golden tears that puddle on the tiles. The echo turns to you, lips parting for the kiss, and you step back, heart pounding, the illusion dissolving with a sigh that echoes your own hollow from the river's toll. Historical whispers from the sagas ground the wonder. In the land Namabak, Iceland's Sherarth century. Book of Settlements, early Norse settlers recounted local legends of Freyja's love hoards. Hidden caches of tales buried in sacred groves where priestesses read from them during solstice's rites, believing the goddess absorbed the sorrows to ensure the land's fertility. Here, in her dream, the library is that hoard magnified, a fate weaver's loom where every thread of tragedy tightens her cage. You press on, Hildisvíni trailing with soft snorts that stir the dust. The boar threshold guardian navigating this sea of ink and ache. The aisles lead to a central rotunda, domed with a ceiling painted like the starless sky you navigated. Constellations of lovers, etched in gold, leaf faint omens of unions doomed by eclipses or broken oaths. At the rotunda's heart stands a grand lectern of carved oak, atop it a single, unbound codex. The saga of Okur's wanderings, its pages thick with Freyja's script, recounting her husband's eternal flights and her unquenched longing. You approach, the necklace flaring as if in recognition, and the book opens of its own accord, pages turning in a breeze you cannot feel. Visions cascade, OPR in distant realms, whispering to heroes under foreign skies. Freyja searches, her war gown donned not for battle but for pursuit, regenerating through lonely nights. Each entry weighs on you, a blood price of empathy, the library's burden seeping into your core. The boar nudges the lectern gently, tusks tapping would like a knock at fate's door. And you sense the next thread. Loki's shadow looms in the margins, the trickster's bargain awaiting in the stacks beyond. The rotunda's hush deepens, the golden light from the books dimming, as if the stories tire of telling. You close the codex, its weight lingering in your hands, a cursed relic among many. In this archive of divine heartaches, where Norse legends blend with the ancient mysteries of lost heroes, what trickster's offer will tempt you to trade a piece of your soul for the key to Freyja's fading light? The codex of Okur's wanderings snaps shut with a sound like a distant door slamming, the golden light from its pages retreating into the leather as if startled. You stand in the rotunda's hush, the weight of countless tragedies settling on your shoulders, like a cloak woven from sighs. Hildisvíni is warm breath, the only living rhythm in the library's perpetual dawn. Brísingamen throbs faintly at your throat, its clasp a conduit for the sorrows absorbed here. Love's end, a thread pulling tighter on Freyja's slumbering cage. The boar nudges you away from the lectern, its tusks brushing your leg in gentle insistence, guiding you toward a shadowed aisle that branches from the central dome. Air stirs, carrying a faint, acrid whiff of smoke and mischief, a scent that prickles your senses like the first hint of a storm. The shelves here lean closer, their tomes bound in unusual hide serpentine scales, raven feathers whispering in tongues that twist like riddles. This wing holds the trickster's tales, where Loki's bargains lurk among the gods' follies. You venture deeper, the obsidian floor cool underfoot, each tile reflecting distorted glimpses of the book's contents. Betrayals etched in flame, oaths unraveled by guile. The light dims to a sly, flickering amber, as if the library itself dims its glow in wary respect. A low chuckle echoes from the stacks ahead, not mocking but inviting. Sound like pebbles tumbling in a stream. Loki's voice, unmistakable from the Norse legends, the shapeshifter whose silver tongue wove chaos into the fabric of fate. He emerges from the shadows not as the bound wolf father of Ragnarok, but as a lean figure in a tattered cloak of green wool. His eyes gleaming like polished obsidian, one corner of his mouth quirked in eternal amusement. His hair falls in wild tangles, streaked with ash, and he leans against a shelf, arms crossed, a dagger twirling idly in one hand, its blade etched with runes that shift like living ink. "Ah, the bearer of burdens," Loki drawls, his voice smooth as oil on water, laced with that psychological intrigue that makes every word a hook. "Come to pilfer from my shelf of clever ends. Freyja's library hoards her pains, but mine hold the keys to unmaking them." Hildisvíni growls low, circling the trickster with tusks lowered. But Loki waves a dismissive hand, the dagger vanishing into his sleeve with a flourish. "Ah!" He is an echo like ochre's shimmer or the Viviva's rasp, drawn from Freyja's memories of divine deceptions, yet his presence feels sharper. It's more alive, as if her slumber cannot fully contain his slippery essence. In the ancient mysteries of Norse deities, Loki was the catalyst for many woes, including the theft of Brísingamen itself in some tellings, where he borrowed the necklace to sow discord among the gods only to return it at Thor's furious demand. Historical accounts in the Poetic Edda, a 13th century manuscript from Iceland that captured Viking oral poetry, portray him as the blood brother to Odin. His tricks binding the Aesir in webs of consequence, from the binding of Fenrir to the death of Balder, you halt. The necklace warming in warning, as Loki steps closer, his cloak rustling like autumn leaves. The wargown regenerates, the library weighs both chains of her making. But I know the unmaking. He plucks a slim volume from the shelf, its cover a patchwork of mirrored shards that reflect your face in fractured pieces. Opening it, the pages shimmer, revealing illustrations of Freyja in her falcon cloak, soaring after OPR, with Loki's shadow trailing like a jealous comet. She sought him endlessly, but I found him once, in a realm of forgotten winds. A bargain sealed it, his wanderings for her silence. Loki's eyes narrow, the quirk in his smile deepening. To free her, you need the wind knot, a relic I wove from storm threads and lies. It binds the absent to the waiting heart. But boons from me always carry a price of truth unspoken. Traded for the knot's unraveling, the trickster leans in, his breath cool and scented with brimstone and wild herbs, the air around him humming with subtle magic. A quirky detail from Loki's lore surfaces. His artifacts, like the wind knot, held a bizarre anomalous function tied to his shape-shifting temperament. They could only be used by one who lied convincingly to themselves, a taboo rule that forced the bearer to embrace deception as truth, often leading to twisted outcomes where the sought boon came the very curse it meant to lift. In the lesser sagas, whispered among skalds, Loki once gifted a similar knot to a mortal queen, promising reunion with her lost king. She wove it tight, but the lie she told herself that love endured unchanged raveled her sanity, turning the palace into a labyrinth of mirrors. You feel the temptation coil, the library's shadows lengthening as if the books lean in to listen. Hildisvíni snorts, a warning rumble, but Loki chuckles again, tossing the book to you. It lands light in your hands, pages fluttering to a blank spread that fills with script, instructions for summoning the knot, scrawled in his jagged hand. "Speak the words here, in the heart of her hoard," he says, gesturing to the rotunda beyond. But choose your lie wisely, the knot tightens on falsehoods, loosens on the half-true. The trickster circles you slowly, his cloak brushing the shelves, stirring dust that sparkles like deceitful stars. Visions flicker from the book. OPR bound by winds, Freyja's tears halting as the knot pulls him homeward. Yet the images warp Loki's face, superimposing over the gods, a hint of the chaos his bargains breed. The recurring motif of sacred bargains presses. Every offer in this realm escalates the trials, demanding choices with prices that scar the soul. Brísingamen flares, repelling Loki's proximity, and he steps back with mock offense, hands raised. No theft this time, bearer. Only a trade. Your unspoken truth for her wandering husband's return. Hildisvíni charges suddenly, a tusk grazing Loki's cloak, and the trickster dissolves into laughter, his form shimmering like heat haze before reforming at the aisle's end. The knot awaits your call. Da-da, but remember, in my games, the winner often loses the most. He vanishes into the stacks. The daggers glint, the last thing you see, leaving behind a faint echo of his chuckle that weaves through the shelves like smoke. You clutch the book, its mirrored cover reflecting your uncertain gaze, the weight of the offer settling like the library's burdens. The board nudges you back toward the rotunda, the path illuminated by the tome's golden light, now tinged with Loki's sly amber. The air hums with possibility and peril, the sonic textures shifting, pages whispering like conspirators, bindings creaking like strained oaths. You return to the lectern, the codex of OPR still open, its pages stirring in an unfelt breeze. Speaking the words feels like crossing another river, the lie you must tell yourself a toll on the spirit. As the incantation forms on your tongue, the library responds, shelves trembling, books glowing brighter, a wind rising from nowhere that carries the scent of storm-swept moors. The wind not materializes in your palmacoil of ethereal threads, twisting like living serpents, warm and pulsing with captured gales. It hums, waiting for the weave, but Loki's warning lingers, a psychological tension that tightens your chest. Hildisvíni watches, eyes steady, as the knot uncoils slightly, ready to bind or betray. In this wing of trickster's trades, where Loki's offers tempt with the promise of reunion, what personal deception will you whisper to the wind not to draw OPR from his endless horizons? You stand at the lectern in the rotunda's heart, the wind, knot, uncoiling in your palm like a serpent tasting the air, its ethereal threads shimmering with captured storm's gray wisps of cloud laced with lightning blue. Veins that pulse in time with the library's humming shelves. Hildisvíni circles the space once, its hooves clicking on the obsidian tiles like a ward against Loki's lingering mischief. Eyes fixed on the knot with wary intelligence. The air thickens, charged with the scent of ozone and aged vellum, the book's golden light flickering as if the stories within strain to witness the bargains weave. Brísingamen weighs heavy at your throat, its clasp a subtle warning thrum, echoing the regrets traded in the dwarves' forge and the visions of Freyja's eternal battles. Loki's offer hangs like a half-spoken riddle. The knot will draw OPR from his horizons. But only if fueled by a deception you whisper to yourself a lie that must convince even your own heart, lest the threads snap and bind you in his place. The personal deception forms slowly. Drawn from the hollows, the river carved in your memories, the sacrificed joy of your father's wooden bird, now a void that aches with unspoken what-ifs. You lean close to the knot, its warmth seeping into your skin like a fever dream, and murmur the words, "Oker's wandering was never abandonment. It was a gift of freedom I too deserve." The lie tastes bitter. A self-deception that twists the truth of your own loss as your cabin's isolation. The amber heart summons, pulling you from a simple life into this labyrinth of God's sorrows. It is half true, born from the feather's flights and the echo's questions on the golden plain, but laced with the envy of Freyja's unquenched longing. The knot responds instantly, threads tightening around your fingers. Warm and insistent, as a gust rises from the floor, swirling dust into miniature cyclones that whisper Loki's chuckle. The library trembles, shelves groaning like ancient ships in a gale. And the wind knot flares, its coils expanding into a net of storm threads that fills the rotunda. Visions cascade from its weave, Oker's form materializing in distant realms, silhouette against phantom horizons. his cloak billowing in winds that carry the scent of foreign spices and salt seas. The knot pulls, threads extending like invisible tethers, snagging the wandering god's essence and reeling it inward. You feel the strain, the lie fueling the magic but eroding your resolve. It's a psychological tension that makes your chest tighten as if the winds choke your breath. Hildisvíni rears, tusks slashing the air to steady you. Its rumble, a grounding thunder amid the rising howl. The books flutter open around you, pages tearing free to join the storm, fragments of lost loves whipping like confetti in the gale, their golden ink smearing into the threads, amplifying the knot's power with Freyja's hoarded griefs. Norse legends Loki's knots were infamous for their double binds artifacts that promised resolution, but sowed deeper chaos. Much like the time he bound the sun goddess Sl's chariot with a similar weave, delaying dawn until the gods bargained for release. Historical echoes in the Gylfaginning section of the Prose Edda, Snorri Sturluson's 13th century cosmological treatise, describe such tricks as tests of fate, where the weaver's intent mirrored the unraveler's soul, successful only if the lie held a kernel of destiny's truth. Here in Freyja's dream, the knot works its motif. Sacred bargains escalating into trials of the self, the winds carrying snippets of the goddesses. The searches her falcon form, diving through clouds. Spear in hand from the wargown's eternal cycle, always one step behind her husband's flight. The sensory creep intensifies, the gale's chill biting like winter's edge, pages rustling like frantic wings, the ozone temps sharpening to the metallic bite of lightning about to strike. The knot tightens threads, humming a low, resonant song that vibrates through your bones. Oaths live in the cut, and OPR's image solidifies in the storm, SI. His face sharp and wind-swept eyes like storm gray, sees reflecting endless paths. He turns toward the pole, a flicker of recognition crossing his features, but the lie phrase at the edges. Your whispered deception wavers, the self-doubt creeping in like fog. The winds buck, the net straining, and Loki's voice echoes from the stacks, sly and distant. Hold the lie, bearer, or become the wanderer. Hildisvíni charges into the gale, its bulk shielding you from the whipping debris, tusks carving paths through the chaos. You grip the knot harder, feeding it more of the half-truth visions of your own unspoken freedoms. The cabin's pine walls a cage you left behind until the threads snap taut, the storm peaking in a deafening crack. The gale subsides as suddenly as it rose, the wind knot collapsing back into your palm, spent, but intact, its coils now laced with faint silver strands, ochre's essence captured, a beacon pulsing toward Rumner. The library settles, pages drifting to the floor like fallen leaves, the golden light steadying into a softer glow. You gasp for breath, the lies toll a hollow ache in your chest, deeper than the river's erosion, as if a piece of your truth has been bartered away. Hildisvíni nuzzles your side, warm and solid, its eyes conveying silent approval. The path forward clarifies, the knot is the key to rousing Freyja. But Loki's bargain has marked you. Shadows in the aisles stir faintly, whispers of the trickster's games lingering like aftershocks. You tuck the knot into your belt beside the feather. Its warmth a companion to Brísingamen's pulse, and Hildisvíni leads you from the rotunda toward a grand archway at the library's far end, its keystone carved with a falcon in flight. The air beyond carries the fresh bite of open skies and distant thunder, a threshold to the realm's apex. The shelves part reluctantly, tomes murmuring farewells, echoes of loves reclaimed or lost in the knot's weave. The recurring epigraph echoes in your mind. When stars shift, grief shifts with them. The library's burdens lighten slightly, as if Freyja's hoard senses the change, but the cost of the deception weighs on you, a self-imposed chain mirroring the goddess's own. As you step through the archway, the library fading behind like a dream half-remembered, the moor reopens under a sky now pricked with faint, returning stars' omens stirring from their eclipse. Hildisvíni bounds ahead, toward a distant spire where the winds converge, but a new presence prickles at your senses, a chorus of voices, soft and insistent, rising from the heather like the dead awakened. In the aftermath of Loki's tangled boon, with Okeir's essence bound in your grasp, what spectral council of the fallen awaits to judge the worth of your whispered deceit? You emerge fully onto the moor, the library's archway sealing behind you with a sigh like settling earth, leaving only a faint ripple in the heather where it stood. Hildisvíni presses forward, its flanks steaming from the knot's gale. Tusks carving a path through the undulating grass that sways under the bruised twilight. The wind knot nestles warm in your belt, its silver-laced coils humming faintly, a captured pulse of ochre's wanderings that tugs at your core like an unfulfilled promise. Brísingamen settles against your skin, its ambers dimmed but vigilant. Echoing the lie you whispered, the self-deception that freedom and abandonment are kin, now a subtle fracture in your resolve. The sky above stirs, faint stars pricking through the eclipse like hesitant eyes, their light casting long shadows from the standing stones that dot the plain. The spire looms in the distance, a jagged pinnacle where winds converge in swirling eddies, promising the final threshold to Sessrumnir. The chorus of voices rises then, soft at first, like murmurs from a half-remembered dream, emerging from the heather as if the moor itself exhales forgotten names. Hildisvíni halts, ears flattening, a low rumble building in its throat as figures materialize from the mist-translucent shades rising knee-high from the grass. Their forms clad in tattered mail and cloaks stained by ancient battles. They are not the blurred guests of the feast, but sharper, more resolute. I'm Hergrade, the chosen slain of Folkvanger, Freyja's half of the honored dead warriors who fell with valor and now dwell in her halls bound to her will, even in slumber. A dozen circle you loosely, their faces etched with the lines of lives cut short, bearded veterans with scarred cheeks, young shield maidens with braids like coiled ropes, all bearing spectral weapons that gleam with ethereal frost. Their eyes, luminous and unblinking, fix on the knot at your belt, then on your face, as if peering through the veil of your whispered deceit. The leader steps forward, a tall figure with a helm crested by raven feathers, his voice a chorus unto itself, deep and resonant. Layered with the echoes of battles won and lost, bearer of the trickster's weave, you tread Our Lady's fields with Loki's shadow on your tongue. What oath did you cut to bind the wanderer? The others murmur assent, their forms flickering like flames in wind, the air filling with the chill scent of frost-kissed iron and peat smoke from long-extinguished pyres. This is no idle gathering. In Norse legends, the Einherjar of Folkvanger were Freyja's elite, feasting in Sessrumnir by day and fighting mock battles by night. Their loyalty absolute, a counter to Valhalla's rowdy throng. Historical fragments from the Ynglinga saga, part of Snorri Sturluson's 13th century. Chronicles of Norwegian kings describe them as spectral advisors in times of crisis, rising from barrows to counsel rulers on matters of honor and fate, their judgment swift and unyielding. You stand firm, Hildisvíni, at your flank like a living shield, its tusks lowered in silent threat. The shades close the circle, their weapon swords half drawn. Spears planted in the heather, humming with a low, vibrational ward that presses against your skin, testing the knot's integrity. The leader extends a gauntlet hand, not an attack, but invitation. And you feel the pull, a compulsion to reveal the bargain, the lie that fuels the relic. We guard her rest, he intones, and judge the souls who seek to stir it. Loki's knots ensnare the unwary. Speak your deceit, or the winds you summoned turn against you. The chorus swells, voices blending into a dirge that evokes the sonic textures of sacred space's iron ringing under breath, amplified by the moor's hush. Whispers of proverbs weaving through, oaths live in the cut. The psychological tension builds. The stars above flickering as if their light wavers with your resolve, the eclipse motif recurring in the shade's translucent forms. A quirky detail from the Einherjar lore surfaces amid the press, in the Vanir traditions preserved in oral hymns later transcribed by 11th century. Icelandic monks, Freyja's chosen dead, carried an anomalous function tied to their postmortem. Temperament, they could divine the truth in a bargain by tasting the air around it, inhaling the scent of guile like hounds on a trail, a taboo that forbade them from judging kin, but compelled them to unmask deceivers, often unraveling the offender's own oaths in the process. You sense it now, the leader leaning in, nostrils flaring as if scenting the ozantang of your self-lie, the half-truth of freedom as abandonment, born from your hollowed memories. The knot stirs in response, threads twitching like nerves exposed, threatening to uncoil and lash out. Hildisvíni snorts sharply, breaking the circle's edge, its presence a reminder of Freyja's fierce loyalty. But the shades hold, their forms solidifying, weapons gleaming brighter. You speak then, the words spilling like a confession to stave off the unraveling, the library's whispers. Loki's sly offer, the deception you fed the knot to capture Ochre's essence. The leader listens, his raven crest tilting, and the chorus falls silent, the air stilling as they deliberate. Visions flicker from the shades fragments of their own ends, a shield maiden falling in a shield wall, her last breath a vow to Freyja. A veteran pierced by a traitor's blade, his oath unbroken in death. These are the fallen who know loss intimately, their judgments a mirror to the goddess's burdens. The library's tales made flesh in spectral form. Your lie holds a seed of truth. The leader concedes at last, his voice softening like thawing frost, but Loki's weave twists all it touches. To pass our watch, offer a token of pure intent, a memory unscarred by deceit. Traded to bind the knot's chaos. The demand hangs a new blood price amid the heather, the moor's winds picking up to tug at your cloak. You search inward, the river's tolls and the seer's sacrifice leaving scant purity. But one fragment remains, the untainted warmth of your grandmother's voice reciting proverbs by the cabin hearth. A simple anchor before the amber heart's call. You extend your hand, palm up, and will the memory forth a glowing ember that rises from your skin, drawn into the leader's gauntlet. The shades inhale collectively, the scent of guile dissipating, and the circle parts, their forms fading back into the heather with nods of solemn approval. The spire awaits, the leader murmurs, his raven crest the last to vanish. Carry our lady's chosen to her side, but beware the winds judge as we do. Hildisvíni bounds forward once more, the path to the spire clearing as the chorus recedes to whispers. The knot settles, its hum steadier, laced now with the Einherjar's verdicta, boon tempered by trial. The stars brighten slightly, omens shifting as if the fallen's judgment stirs the heavens. The recurring motif of threshold guardians escalates. Each council, each shade peels back layers of the quest, demanding pieces of the self for Freyja's freedom. The spire draws near, its peak crowned by swirling gales that echo the knot's storm, final ascent under the awakening sky. But as the winds howl louder, carrying faint echoes of Ochre's distant call, what final tempest at the spire's summit will test the bound essence against Freyja's deepest, self-imposed veil? The spire rises before you like a spear thrust into the moor's heart, its jagged form a colossal root of phantom. Yggdrasil twisted by sorrow into stone and storm, veined with glowing fissures that pulse like the war gown's golden threads. D charges up the winding path at its base. Hooves churning the heather into fragrant earth, its breath a steady fog against the rising gale that whips your cloak and tugs at the wind knot in your belt. The stars above have multiplied. Faint constellations reforming in hesitant patterns, the wagon tilting sideways. Freyja's ship riding its course as if the Einherjar's judgment has coaxed the heavens from their eclipse. Brísingamen flares intermittently at your throat, its clasp sinking with the spire's fissures. A beacon drawing you upward through the escalating winds that howled like the chorus of the fallen, carrying echoes of their dirge. Oaths live in the cut. The feather from the Valshamr stirs in your grasp, its silver tips vibrating, ready to grant flight if the ascent demands it. But you press on foot, each step a deliberate claim on the trials endured. The path spirals tighter, the moor's expanse falling away into shadowed valleys below, where the golden plain and silver sea glimmer like distant memories. The air thins and sharpens, laced with the electric temps of impending thunder and the faint, resinous bite of birch sap from the grove far behind. Psychological tension coils in your chest. The lie to the knot freedom is abandonment, now a living doubt that whispers with the gale, testing the knot's coils like fingers probing a wound. Hildisvíni slows as the path steepens into a sheer climb, roots protruding like natural handholds, slick with mist. You grip them, the stone cool and unyielding, each pull upward, extracting a toll from muscles weary from the realm's endless labors. The spire's summit nears, crowned by a vortex of swirling winds that spiral inward like a maelstrom frozen in place, its eye, a dark void where no stars penetrate, a final veil, Freyja's deepest self-imposed barrier, woven from the essence of her unhealed heart. You crest the edge, the feather unfurling invisible wings to steady your landing beside the boar, who plants its tusks into the rock like anchors. The summit is a flat dais of weathered granite, ringed by rune-carved obelisks that hum in harmony with the storm. Their symbols depicting lovers parted by tempest-soakers silhouette against howling gales, Freyja reaching from shadowed shores. The vortex dominates the center, a tempest in miniature. Winds raging clockwise with ferocious precision, flecked with golden flecks that sparkle like tears caught mid-fall. This is the tempest of veiled longing. The spire's apex where Freyja's sorrow manifests as unyielding fury, a barrier that repels all who seek her core. In Norse legends, such storms were the domain of the winds of Niflheimer, the mist world, but here they serve Freyja's will, guarding the slumber where her essence resides, untouchable even by the gods. The wind knot flares in your belt, its threads uncoiling of their own accord, drawn to the vortex like iron to a lodestone. Ochre's captured essence surges within it, silver pulse that battles the gale's pull, the relic straining as if alive with the god's own frenzy. You step forward, Hildisvíni at your side. The boars rumble a defiant counter to the howl, and extend the knot toward the storm's heart. The winds lash out immediately, buffing you sideways, cold and unrelenting, carrying the sensory creep of ice-rimed iron and the distant crash of waves on the silver sea. Visions assail you, Freyja in her falcon form, battered by similar tempests in pursuit of OPR. Her wargown regenerating amid lightning strikes, each mend a stolen joy. The library's tomes whipping through the air like vengeful spirits, pages tearing to reveal half-finished oaths. The psychological intrigue peaks. The tempest tests not just the knot, but the bearer's conviction, amplifying doubts into gales that threaten to hurl you from the spire. A quirky detail from the ancient mysteries of Freyja's veils emerges amid the chaos in the Vanir esoteric lore. Preserved in fragmented runes from 10th century Swedish runestones, her deepest barriers held an anomalous function tied to her dual nature, as love and worth they could only be. Pierced by a relic infused with equal parts reunion and release. A taboo rule that demanded the weaver sacrifice their own longing, turning the storm's fury inward, if the balance faltered often, leaving the intruder adrift in eternal winds. You feel it now, the vortex sensing the knot's intent, winds coiling around the threads to test their weave. Loki's lie frays further, the self-deception of freedom clashing with the pull of Freyja's isolation, and the storm roars louder, golden flecks stinging your skin like needles of regret. Hildisvíni braces against you, its bulk a windbreak, tusks digging deeper into the stone as lightning cracks overhead. Illuminating the void's depths, a swirling silhouette of Freyja, veiled and serene, her tear-streaked face turned away. You chant the incantation from Loki's book, voice barely audible over the gale, feeding the knot your remaining anchors. The grandmother's proverb by the hearth, now traded to the Einherjar. The unscarred warmth of a childhood dawn before the cabin's summons. The threads expand, silver essence lancing into the vortex. Ochre's form materializing within tall and windswept, his eyes locking on the veiled goddess with a mix of longing and wild freedom. The tempest bucks winds howling in protest, but the knot holds, pulling the two essences closer. Freyja stirs in the void, her hand extending, golden tears flowing faster to fuel the barrier's rage. The feather vibrates in your grip, granting bursts of uplift to counter the downdrafts, while Brísingamen blazes, its ambers sinking with the spire's runes to stabilize the weave. The sonic textures overwhelm, thunder rumbling like Hildisvíni's bellows, winds whistling through the obelisks like seer chants, the knot's hum rising to a crescendo that vibrates your teeth. The climax builds as OPR reaches Freyja, their forms colliding in a burst of light, passion reignited, the veil thinning like mist under sun. But the taboo activates. The storm turns inward. Gales whipping at your own doubts, the lies fracture widening into a chasm of self-reckoning. Visions flood, your life beyond the dream, the cabin empty, the amber heart's price echoing in solitude. Hildisvíni roars, charging the vortex's edge, dush, dush, parting the winds like a plow through soil, buying you moments to reinforce the knot with raw will to truth beneath the lie, that love's freedom demands release. The tempest crests, lightning forking to strike the obelisks, runes flaring as the barrier shatters in a cascade of golden rain. Freyja's form solidifies, her eyes opening to meet Ochre's, the reunion a quiet dawn breaking the eternal twilight. The winds die to a whisper, the spire's summit stilling under a sky, now alive with stars, omens realigned, the eclipse lifted. Freyja stands before you, no longer veiled, her war gown shed for a simple shift, Brísingamen gleaming at her throat as if reclaimed. OPR at her side, hand in hers, both gazing at you with profound gratitude laced with sorrow. Bearer, she says, voice like honeyed mead, you have unraveled what I wove in grief. The realm stirs, says Rumnir calls. Hildisvíni nuzzles her leg, the boar fading into golden light, its essence returning to her. But as the dreamscape blurs, the waking world tugging at the edge, Jor cabin's pine scent, the amber heart's final tear-wet remnant of the goddess Espoon will you carry back through the seer's fading spiral. The spire's summit bathes in the newborn starlight, the shattered tempest remnants drifting like golden motes in a gentle breeze that carries the faint, sweet perfume of Vanaheim's meadows' wildflowers, crushed under divine feet mingled with the clean post-storm clarity of rain on stone. Freyja stands before you, her form radiant yet weary, the shift of simple linen clinging to her like mist, her hair a cascade of autumn gold unbound by grief's weight. OPR clasps her hand, his wind-swept features softened by reunion. Eyes reflecting the reformed constellations above the wagon steady now, Freyja's ship sailing true across the vault. Hildisvíni has dissolved fully into her essence. The boar's loyalty a warm undercurrent in her gaze. But you feel its echo in your own resolve, a steadfast companion carried through the trials. Brísingamen gleams at her throat, whole and vibrant, its ambers syncing with yours in a final, harmonious pulse. As if the necklace acknowledges the mending you wrought not just in metal, but in the goddess's fractured heart. She steps closer, her touch light on your shoulder, cool and electric, like the first drop of a summer storm. You have walked my sorrow's bearer, Freyja murmurs. Voice a melody that resonates in your chest, evoking the seer chants from Sesrunia's distant halls. The labyrinth unravels. My slumber ends. OPR returns, not as captive, but as equal, his wanderings a rhythm to my rest. OPR nods, his free hand brushing the wind knot in your belt, the coils fading to silver dust that swirls upward, joining the stars like threads, rewoven into fate's tapestry. The lie you whispered, the self-deception of freedom's double-edge dissolves with it, leaving a clarified ache, not hollow, but honest, a scar that speaks of growth amid the gods' ancient mysteries. The sky brightens fully, the bruised twilight yielding to a soft aurora that dances in greens and golds, omens of renewal washing over the moor below. The dream realm responds in waves. The golden plain shimmers, tears melting back into fluid light. The birch's weeping halts, sap reversing into vibrant flow. The silver sea calms to a mirror, reflecting the awakening heavens. Visions cascade one last time, Freyja rising from her throne in Sesrumnir. The Einherjar feasting anew, Loki's chuckles turning to reluctant toasts in the shadows. But the pull of the waking world strengthens. The seer spiral manifesting as a vortex of pine-scented mist at the spire's edge. Your cabin's wooden walls flickering into view like a half-open door. Freyja's eyes meet yours, profound with gratitude, and a lingering sorrow that no boon can fully erase. Ask your remnant, mortal. What piece of my essence shall bridge the realms? You hesitate, the trial's tolls flashing, the sacrifice joy, the river's erosion. The Einherjar's token, Loki's tangled lie. The feather from the Valshamr stirs in your hand, its iridescent barbs now glowing with her light, but you seek deeper a balance to the costs paid. A spark of your unyielding love, you say, to mend what wanderings have torn in my own heart. She smiles, curve like dawn over fjords, and places her palm over yours. Warmth floods you, not overwhelming, but enduring a quiet strength that fills the voids. The remnant a boon of Freyja's dual nature, love's passion tempered by war's resilience. It settles like a hearth fire in your core, promising to guide your steps beyond the dream, turning isolation into purposeful paths, regrets into reclaimed joys. The vortex widens, the spire dissolving into swirling amber and wind, OPR and Freyja stepping back as one, their forms blending into the aurora. Return, Bera, she calls, her voice carrying over the fade. And remember, when stars shift, grief shifts with them, but so does Grace Hildisvíni's final snort echoes. A farewell from the underworld guide, as the seer pulls you through. The moor vanishes, the stars winking out, placed by the familiar creak of your cabin floorboards, the amber heart on the table pulsing once. Then stilling, its tears evaporated into dry golden residue. You awaken fully, slumped by the ritual circle, the spiral's embers cold ash under the window's dawn light. The wooden bird from your father perches nearby, its carved eyes seeming wiser. The hollow of lost memory now bridged by Freyja's spark a subtle warmth that eases the ache, turning solitude into quiet anticipation. Outside, the Norwegian forest stirs with morning mist, the world unchanged yet forever altered, and the boon lingers, a divine echo in your veins, unyielding love to face whatever wanderings await. The dream realms, motif sows, relics, thresholds fade to whispers, but their truths endure, a sacred bargain sealed across the veil. In the quiet aftermath of God's reunion, with Freyja's grace as your anchor, what new path will the waking world unfold under the light of realigned stars? The dawn light filters through the cabin's frost-laced window, painting the wooden walls in hues of pale gold and soft blue. The fjord is outside a serene mirror of mountains and mist that stirs lazily with the first breaths of morning. You rise slowly from the ritual circle, joints stiff from the night's vigil, the ash of the seer spiral crumbling under your fingers like the remnants of a faded dream. The amber heart sits inert on the table, its surface smooth and unweeping. A relic transformed from summoner to silent witness, Freyja's spark lingers within you, a subtle warmth that radiates from your coronata blaze, but a steady ember, easing the edges of the hollow where joys were traded. It infuses the air around you, making the pine-scented room feel less like isolation and more like a threshold to something unfolding. The wooden bird from your father catches the light, its carved wings seeming to flex in the glow as if the boon's grace has touched even the mundane artifacts of your life. You step outside, the crisp air filling your lungs with the temps of salt and evergreen, the gravel path crunching under boots worn from the dream's intangible miles. The village stirs below, the hill smoke curling from chimneys. The distant low of cattle, fishermen hauling nets by the dock, a world of quiet rhythms that the labyrinth-esque chaos now frames in sharper relief. The spark pulses gently as you walk, Freyja's unyielding love manifesting in small ways. A neighbor's wave feels like an oath renewed, the fjord's waves whispering proverbs rather than warnings. Memories once eroded by the river return in fragments not whole, but mended. The warmth of your father's hand on the pier blending with the goddess's touch, turning loss into a bridge rather than a chasm. Loki's lie has dissolved fully, leaving only the truth it veiled. Wanderings. WHETHEROKRs are your own, are not chains but choices, each step a sacred bargain with the self. Yet the boon carries its own subtle weight, a recurring motif from the dream realm that refuses to fade entirely. As you reach the dock, where the water laps against weathered pilings, a faint hum rises from your belt, the feather from the Valshamr, tucked away but stirring, its iridescent barbs glinting in the sunlight. It was overlooked in the awakening, a remnant not claimed by Freyja's farewell, now a bridge between worlds. You draw it out, the plume warm and alive, and a whisper of wind carries a vision. Sesrumnar s halls, alive with feast. Einherjar, toasting your name, OPR and Freyja, dancing under reformed stars. But the feather quivers pointing northward along the fjord toward the shadowed cliffs where local legends speak of hidden barrows and chained sites of Vanir worship, long buried but stirring in tales of modern wanderers who vanish into mists drawn by unseen calls. The village elder, Old Harold, with his weather-beaten face and tales spun from half-remembered sagas, spots you from his porch and hobbles over, pipe in hand. You've the look of one who's walked the old paths, he rasps, eyes narrowing at the feather. That gleam falcon's mark, our grandmother spoke of such gifts from the lady of the slain, left for those who mend what's broken. He puffs his pipe, smoke curling like the dream's gales. Up the cliffs, there's a barrow untouched since the old kings. Folks say it weeps gold in the full moon, but only for the worthy. If your bird sings true, perhaps it's calling you. His words evoke the library's tomes, the moor's shades. a new threshold disguised as folklore Norse mysteries bleeding into the waking world. Where heroes' omens persist in the everyday, spark flares in response, Freyja's grace urging you onward. Not as command, but invitation, the unyielding love a compass for paths untaken. You pocket the feather, its hum syncing with your heartbeat, and glance at the cliff's jagged sentinels rising against the sky, veined with quartz that catches the sun like Brísingamen's ambers. The fjord's waters deepen to indigo, whispering of silver seas crossed, and a breeze carries the faint, resinous scent of birches from the woods beyond. Hildisvíni's echo lingers in your step, a boar's steadfast push against uncertainty. The dream was no mere slumber. It was initiation, the god's labyrinth, a mirror to mortal trials, where every relic feather, knot, or spark demands its price and yields its power. As the sun climbs higher, villagers gather for the morning's work. There lives a tapestry of simple oaths and quiet loves, unaware of the veil you pierced. The elder claps your shoulder, his grip firm. Whatever calls, heed it with care. The old ones don't give without taking. You nod, the spark warming against the chill, and turn toward the path up the cliffs, the feathers point unerring. The waking world unfolds not as end, but continuation, a new saga under realigned stars, where Freyja's remnant weaves through the fabric of the now. But as the trail winds upward, the barrow's shadow lengthening in the midday light, what ancient echo from the dream awaits in the depths of the untouched mound, ready to test the boon's enduring flame? The trail up the cliffs twists like a serpent's spine, gravel and scree shifting under your boots as the fjord falls away below, its indigo waters shrinking to a silver thread glinting in the midday sun. The feather from the Valshamr hums steadily in your pocket, its vibrations syncing with Freyja's spark in your Cora dual rhythm that propels you onward, turning the steep incline from burden to purposeful ascent. The air grows sharper here, laced with the briny tang of the sea, and the earthy musk of exposed rock, undercut by a faint, resinous whisper that evokes the birch's grove from the dream. Harold's words linger like an elder's proverb, grounding the wonder. The barrow ahead, untouched since the old kings, a mound of heaped earth and stone half veiled by thorny scrub. Its entrance a low, arched maw shadowed by overhanging boulders. No modern paths mark it, it's only faint runes, weathered to near invisibility. Peek from the lichen-crusted facade symbols of falcons and entwined oaths, motifs that stir the embers of your trials. You pause at the threshold, the sun's warmth yielding to a cool draft that seeps from the darkness within, carrying the musty scent of undisturbed soil and something sweeter, like wilted wildflowers pressed in ancient tomes. The spark flares gently. Freyja's unyielding love a shield against the psychological tension coiling in your gut, the dream-esque echoes pressing close. As if the waking world is but another layer of the labyrinth. The feather quivers, urging entry, and you step inside, the archway swallowing the light behind you. The barrow's interior unfolds as a narrow passage, walls rough-hewn and veined with quartz that catches stray sunbeams, casting fractured rainbows across the floor. Your footsteps echo softly, a sonic texture of sacred spaces reborn, stone ringing under breath. Amplified by the confined hush, whispers of wind threading through cracks like the library's pages stirring. The passage levels into a chamber, modest yet profoundest circular space with a low ceiling supported by rune-etched pillars. The air thick with the weight of centuries. At its center lies a stone slab, not a grave, but an altar, its surface etched with a spiral that mirrors the seer circle from your cabin. Scattered around it are relics. A tarnished bronze arm ring coiled like a serpent, a shard of amber veined with gold, and a single, weathered quill falcon's feather faded but unmistakable, its barbs brittle with age. This is no mere burial mound. It is a Vanir shrine, a hidden nexus where Freyja's worshippers once communed with the Veil. Local legends from the fjord villages recounting how priestesses retreated here during solstices to weave fates with seer threads, their rituals blending loves. It's with war's resolve. Historical whispers from the 9th century Icelandic annals, like those in the Islendinga book, describe such barrows as love barrows, sites where the goddess's echoes lingered, granting boons to the pure-hearted but ensnaring the deceitful in cycles of longing. As you approach the altar, the feather in your pocket flares hot, syncing with the ancient quill on the slab. The air shimmers, and an ancient echo materializes, not a shade like the Einherjar, but a translucent priestess, her form clad in a shift embroidered with falcon motifs, hair braided with amber beads that glow faintly. She is no warrior, but a seer weaver, her eyes milky like the vivivas, fixed on you with knowing calm. "Bearer of the lady's grace," she intones. Her voice a rasp like wind through reeds, layered with the chorus of forgotten rites. You return her spark to these stones where first it was kindled. But the barrow tests what the dream began. What remnant of divine fire endures in mortal clay? Hildisvíni's echo stirs within you, a phantom nudge at your side, as the priestess gestures to the relics, their surfaces warming under an unseen light. The psychological intrigue builds, the chamber's confines pressing like the spire's winds. Amplifying doubts, has the boon survived the crossing, or is it diluted by waking banalities, the village's routines, the fjords and different tides? The priestess circles the altar slowly, her braids swaying, and recounts the barrow's secret in the Vanir traditions. Preserved in fragmented runic inscriptions from Norwegian rock carvings dated to the 8th century, this site held an anomalous function tied to Freyja's temperament, a flame altar, where boons were tested by igniting a sacred pyre with the bearer's intent. A taboo rule that consumed false graces in purifying fire, leaving only the true essence to emerge stronger, often revealing hidden longings as scars on the soul. You feel the pull, the spark in your core responding to the amber shard, which now pulses in rhythm with Brísingamen's memory. Though the necklace remains in the dream, its echo lingers in your veins. Compelled, you place your hand on the slab, willing Freyja's remnant forth. The quartz veins ignite, a soft glow spreading to the relics. The arm ring uncoils slightly. The ancient quill straightens, and the amber shard cracks open to reveal a hollow within, empty but humming. The priestess chants, words in Old Norse that evoke the library's incantations when stars shift. Grief shifts with them, and the chamber warms, a pyre kindling at the altar's edge from no fuel but will. Flames leap, blue and gold, licking at your palm without burning, testing the spark. Visions assail, Freyja and Sesrumnir, her hand on yours during the farewell, ochre's winds merging with the fjord's breeze. The dream's trials replaying in miniature, the river's gray flow as the pyre's smoke, Loki's chuckle as crackling embers.
Now the fire probes deeper.
Unearthing a new truth, the boon's flame endures, but it awakens a dormant, longing in you not for the gods' realm but for connection in the waking world, the isolation of your cabin life now a self-woven chain begging to be mended. The priestess nods, her form solidifying briefly, and extends the ancient quill. This echo joins your feather-twin wings for the paths ahead. The barrow yields its guardian, but the test reveals love's fire burns brightest when shared. The pyre dies to embers. The spark in you brighter, infused with the altar's power, a refined boon. Freyja's grace now laced with the priestess's seer, promising visions or swift escapes in moments of need. The arm ring and amber remain, offerings to the site, their weight lifting as you claim the quill. The chamber's glow fades, the priestess dissolving into mist that swirls toward the entrance. Her final words a whisper. Carry the flame outward, bearer. The fjord holds more veils than one. You emerge into the afternoon light. The barrow's maw, sealing behind with a subtle shift of stone, as if it never yawned open. The feather and quill together in your pocket, hum and duet, spark pulsing with renewed vigor, turning the cliff's descent into a path of possibility. Below, the village bustles, fishermen calling, children laughing, a tapestry ripe for weaving your own oaths. Harold waits at the dock, pipe unlit, his eyes questioning. But as the sun dips toward evening, casting long shadows over the water, a new omen stirs. A lone falcon wheeling overhead, its cry echoing the dream's winds, circling toward a distant inlet where mists gather unnaturally thick. In the barrow's purified flame, with twin feathers as guides and Freyja's enduring spark alight, what veiled mystery in the fjord's misty inlet calls you to test the boon's wings against the waking world's hidden currents? The falcon's cry pierces the afternoon haze, sharp and insistent as it banks low over the fjord, wings slicing the air toward the distant inlet where mists coiled like serpents guarding a secret. You stand at the dock's edge. the twin feathers or Valshamr plume and the barrow's ancient quill humming in unison against your thigh. Their duet syncing with Freyja's spark in a rhythm that quickens your pulse. Harold squints at the bird, his pipe forgotten in his gnarled hand, the wind tugging at his wool cap. "That's no fisher's hawk," he mutters, voice gravelly with the weight of half-believed tales. "Circles like it's calling kin. The inlet's no place for strangers' old wrecks there. And fog that swallows boats whole." His words evoke the silver sea's whispers from the dream. Waking echo of thresholds veiled in peril, and the spark flares warmly, urging you toward the mystery without fear, only the steady resolve of unyielding love. You nod farewell to the elder, the gravel path giving way to a narrower trail along the water's edge, where salt-crusted rocks jut like the spire's obelisks, worn by tides that lap with rhythmic insistence. The fjord's indigo depths deepen here, currents swirling lazily but deceptively strong, carrying the faint, briny scent of kelp and something sharper decayed wood, perhaps, or the metallic tang of buried iron. The mist thickens as you near the inlet, a narrow arm of the fjord, hemmed by sheer cliffs, veined with quartz that glimmers like the barrow-esque walls. The sun's rays fracturing into hazy beams that dance on the water's surface. The falcon wheels once more, dipping low enough to brush your shoulder with a rush of air, its iridescent feathers mirroring your own relic before vanishing into the fog. The feathers in your pocket vibrate sharply, sonic texture of sacred space is reborn, wind whistling through quills like seer chants, amplified by the mist's hush. The inlet reveals itself gradually, a hidden cove where the cliffs curve inward like embracing arms, the water pooling into a glassy stillness unbroken by waves. At its heart lies a half-submerged Recan ancient longship, its hull splintered and barnacle-encrusted, tilted against a rocky outcrop as if beached in eternal vigil. No modern vessel, this. Its prow carves a dragon's head, eyes inlaid with faded amber that catches the light. Runes along the gunnels eroded, but legible symbols of falcons in flight, and knotted. Wind's motifs that stir the dream's gales and Loki's bargains. Doubt local legends from the fjord's oral histories, passed down in fishermen's yarns, and etched in 10th century runic stones nearby. Speak of this as the Wanderer's Bane, a ship lost during a Vanir ritual gone awry, where a priestess sought to bind a wayward lover across the seas, only for the mists to claim the crew in a veil of unending fog. The wreck's presence feels like a cursed relic, a bridge between the dream's labyrinth and the waking world's hidden currents. As you approach, the mist parts slightly, revealing a faint glow from the ship's hold, a golden shimmer that pulses in time with your spark. The feathers urge you aboard, their hum escalating into a near-audible song. And you wade into the shallows, water cold and clinging like the River of Waning Hope's gray flow. Climbing the splintered side, wood groaning under your weight, you drop into the hold, the air inside damp, and heavy, scented with rot and a sweeter undernote timbre resin like the heart's tears. The chamber is a time capsule, oars stacked in rotted racks, shields cracked and furred with moss, and at the center a small altar of driftwood upon which rests a coiled rope of woven kelp and gold thread knotted intricately like the wind knot's echo. This is the veiled mystery, a remnant of the priestess's failed seer, bound to the inlet's mists as a guardian of unspoken longings. The rope stirs as you near, threads uncoiling lazily. The mist in the hold thickens into a figure, a spectral priestess. Not the barrow's echo, but kin, her form translucent and water-wreathed, eyes like polished sea glass. She is clad in a sodden shift embroidered with wave motifs, hair drifting like seaweed. Her voice a murmur like tides on pebbles. Seeker of the lady's flame, you bring her grace to waters that drown oaths. The Wanderer's Bane holds what the dream released, a knot of the deep, to bind or free the heart's wanderers. Hildisvíni's phantom presence nudges at your mind, boar snort cutting the damp hush as the priestess gestures to the rope. Its knots glowing faintly with the same blue gold as the pyre's flames. The psychological tension rises, the hold's confines pressing like the library's aisles. Amplifying the spark's warmth against the chilled doubt, has Freyja's boon crossed into these waters, or will the mists claim it as they did the crew? A quirky detail from the fjord's esoteric lore surfaces amid the swirl. In the Vanir rituals documented in fragmented sagas from the 12th century, Floaty Yarbuk, such knots held an anomalous function tied to Freyja's seafaring aspect. They could summon lost loves from the depths, but demanded a submerged truth, a taboo rule, where the diver's unspoken regret fueled the weave, often pulling the binder into the currents, if the longing proved too heavy, turning rescue into eternal drift. You feel the pull now, the rope responding to your spark, threads extending like tendrils into the water pooling at your feet. The priestess watches her seaweed hair undulating and recounts the wreck's tale. The priestess aboard sought her vanished betrothed, a sailor lost to storms, weaving the knot with seer under Freyja's name. The mists rose, the ship foundered, but the relic endured, waiting for one whose grace balanced love's pull with release. Compelled by the feather's song, you grasp the rope, its weave cool and slick, pulsing with the fjord's hidden currents. The spark ignites within, channeling Freyja's unyielding love into the knots. Visions bloom. The ancient priestess chanting on deck, waves crashing like the tempest's howl. Her betrothed's face in the foam, reaching but receding. The crew's shadows dissolving into mist, oaths cut short by the deep. The rope tightens under your touch, golden threads flaring, and the hold floods with light, the mists parting to reveal a submerged chamber below, where skeletal figures lie in repose, not decayed but preserved, their hands clutching faded amulets of amber and bone. The knot's power surges, pulling you downward in spirit if not body. The taboo activating. Your own submerged truth resides, lingering regret for connections left untended in the village. The cabin's solitude, a self-chosen fog. The priestess nods, her form solidifying in the glow. Unravel or bind bearer. The deep yields its echoes to the worthy flame. You chant a variation of Loki's incantation. Adapted by the spark's intuition, feeding the knot your clarified longing, not possession, but shared paths. The rope responds, threads dissolving into the water, the mists lifting fully from the inlet. The skeletal crew stirs, not as undead but as released shades, ascending through the hall in wisps of light, their faces peaceful, oaths fulfilled in the boon's grace. One amulet floats to you, a small falcon pendant of amber, warm and humming, a new relic to join the feathers. The priestess smiles faintly, dissolving into spray. The fjord's veils thin, carry the deep's freedom outward. The lady's spark sails with you now. You emerge from the wreck as the sun dips lower. The inlet clear and sparkling, the falcon returning to perch on the prow, its cry a triumphant note. The pendant nestles beside the feathers, the spark brighter. Infused with the sea's resilience, a boon evolved. Freyja's love now a current to navigate mortal tides. Harold waits at the trail's end, eyes wide at the clearing mist. Whatever you did, lad, the fog's gone. Like the old tales say, the village lights flicker on as evening falls, hearths calling like Caesarunia's feasts. But as you walk home, the pendant warms, pointing subtly eastward along the fjord, toward a cluster of ancient standing stones half buried in the woods, where shadows lengthen unnaturally, the inlet's unveiled depths, the deeps not unraveled and Freyja's flame sailing free. But shadowed council among the standing stones beckons to weave the Bune's light into the night's encroaching mysteries. Twilight deepens along the fjord's eastern shore as you follow the pendants. Subtle warmth, the trail veering from the water's edge into a thicket of birch and pine, where the air turns cooler laced. With the damp earthiness of moss and the faint acrid tang of wood smoke from unseen hearths, the twin feathers rustle in your pocket, their hum a soft counterpoint to the crunch of needles underfoot. While Freyja's spark pulses steadily in your Cora beacon against the encroaching night that drapes the woods in velvet shadows, the village lights fade behind, their warm glow a distant reminder of mortal rhythms. But the pendant pulls insistent, its amber surface now faintly glowing, etching falcon runes into the twilight. Harold's parting glance lingers in your mind, a mix of awe and caution, as if the elder senses the veil thinning around you. The dream's motifs bleeding into the waking like ink into water. The woods thicken branches interlacing overhead to form a natural canopy that filters the last slivers of sunset into dappled patterns on the ground. The path narrowing to a game trail, hemmed by ferns that brush your legs like whispering shades. The standing stones emerge abruptly from the undergrowth, a circle of 7 monoliths. Weathered granite rising 8 feet high, their surfaces etched with spirals and knotwork that catch the emerging moonlight like silver veins. They form an irregular ring, moss-cloaked, and tilted as if bowed by centuries of wind. The center a flat clearing scattered with quartz pebbles that glimmer faintly. This is no casual henge. Local lore from the fjord's skalds, echoed in 11th century runic inscriptions carved nearby, marks it as a Norn ring, a site where the Fate Weaver's echoes gathered under Freyja's watch, where oaths were sworn and shadows judged in the hush of night. The air hums here, a low vibration that resonates with the spark, amplifying its warmth into a subtle thrum that vibrates through your bones. As you step into the circle, the pendant flares hot against your chest, and the shadows among the stones coalesce not as darkness, but as figures rising like mist given form. They are a council of 3 spectral elders, translucent and robed in cloaks of woven bark and feather, their faces lined with the wisdom of ages, eyes glowing with the pale light of northern lights. The central figure, a crone with a staff topped by a falcon's skull, leans forward, her voice a chorus of rustling leaves and distant thunder. Bearer of the lady's enduring flame, you tread the Norn ring with relics of the deep and dream. The night council awakens. What shadows do you cast upon the weave? The others flank her, a stern warrior with a scarred brow clutching a spectral spear, and a hooded seer whose hands weave invisible threads in the air, their presence pressing like the Einherjar. Circle on the moor, a threshold guardian reborn in the waking woods. Hildisvíni's echo stirs within you, a phantom snort that scatters the underbrush, grounding you amid the psychological tension that coils tight, the spark's light clashing with the night's chill. Doubt's whispering of overreach has Freyja's grace extended too far into the mortal veil, inviting judgments from echoes of the Norns themselves. The crone taps her staff, and the stones respond, runes igniting in sequence, casting the clearing in ethereal blue. The sonic textures of sacred spaces enveloping you, stone humming under breath. Winds sighing through the monoliths like the library's pages, faint chants layering the hush. The warrior speaks next, voice gravelly as grinding boulders. The inlet's mist cleared, the barrow's fire kindled, but the ring tests the balance. Your boons mend, yet what fractures do they widen in the fates we guard? The seer nods, her hooded gaze piercing, threads in her hands glowing as they mimic the wind knot's coils. Visions flicker from the runes, projected onto the quartz-strewn ground. Threads of destiny weaving around your form, the dream's labyrinth as a knot in the tapestry. Freyja's reunion, a loosened strand, your waking trials pulling new patterns from the fjord's currents. In Norse legends, the Norn ring sites like this one were liminal spaces where the 3 sisters Zord, Verdandi schooled manifested through mortal proxies, judging oaths under the moon to ensure the world's balance. Historical accounts from the 13th century Eddas, Snorri Sturluson's compilations of Viking cosmology, describe such councils as nocturnal tribunals, where wanderers presented relics for verdict, the fates' quirks demanding a shadow offering, a revelation of hidden intents. A taboo rule that bound the unworthy to the stone's eternal vigil if their light proved dim. You feel the council's probe now, the spark illuminating your core, but exposing edges, the cabin's solitude, a self-woven isolation. Unspoken bonds with villagers, oaths untended like the priestess's failed knot. The crone extends her staff, the falcon's skull's eyes locking on the pendant. Offer your shadow bearer. Let the ring weave your truth into the night. Compelled you draw the relics, the feathers and pendant, placing them at the center, the spark channeling forth in a golden aura that bathes the stones. The council circles, chanting in rhythmic Old Norse. And the visions intensify, your life's threads intersecting with the gods. The seer spiral as a Norn-esque spindle. Loki's lie is a snagged yarn, Freyja's grace is a mending needle. The psychological intrigue peaks, the night pressing close, shadows lengthening to test the boon's endurance. A fracture reveals. The spark has awakened not just love's resilience, but a latent call to share it to mend the village's quiet fractures, perhaps as a storyteller or guide, turning personal flame into communal light. The seer weaves her threads around the relics, knotting them into a new talisman, a small rune-etched stone that absorbs the glow. Cooling in your palm as the council nods approval, Your shadow yields balance, the crone declares, her form fading with the others into the monoliths. The flame endures, refined by Night the Ring's gift, a seer's stone to glimpse fate's unfolding. But the weave tightens, eastward, where the woods meet the ridge, a veiled barrow stirs, its guardian awakened by your light. The stones dim, the clearing returning to moonlit hush, the talisman humming softly, revealing faint glimpses, heralded by his fire. A village girl with longing eyes, threads of connection waiting to be woven. You pocket the stone beside the relics, the spark steadier, infused with the council's verdict a boon, evolved yet again. Freyja's love now laced with foresight's clarity. The night deepens, stars wheeling overhead in patterns that echo the dream's reformed sky. The falcon's distant cry guiding eastward. The woods part slightly, revealing a ridge trail under moonlight, where shadows dance unnaturally around a mound half-veiled by thorns and new barrow, its entrance yawning like the first, promising deeper mysteries. In the Nornring's shadowed judgment, with the seer's stone unveiling fates and Freyja's flame balanced anew, what awakened guardian in the ridge's veiled barrow will challenge? The talisman's light against the night's unyielding weave. Moonlight silvering the ridge trail. You press eastward through the wood's thinning edge, the seer's stone in your pocket casting faint, prophetic glimmers that illuminate snippets of the path-twisted roots like knotted fates. Quartz outcrops winking like distant stars. The twin feathers and falcon pendant hum in harmony with Freyja's spark. Their combined resonance a steady thrum that drowns the night's subtle creaks. Owls hooting in the canopy, leaves rustling like the library's pages in a breeze. The air cools further, carrying a mineral sharpness from the exposed rock ahead, mingled with the faint herbal tang of crushed time underfoot, a sensory echo of the dream's sacred groves, grounding the waking mystery in familiar motifs. Hildisvíni's phantom presence lingers as a warm nudge at your flank, urging resolve against the psychological tension that builds with each step. The Nornring's verdict has refined the boon. But the night's weave feels tighter, as if the fates conspire to test its limits, pulling threads from your core like a loom unraveling under strain. The veiled barrow crests the ridge like a sleeper's mound, larger than the first, its earthen dome overgrown with thorns, and brambles that form a natural barrier, pierced only by a single arched crevice, exhaling cool, musty breath. Moonshadows play across its surface, etching the thorns into jagged silhouettes that evoke the spire's obelisks or the wreck's splintered hull, a threshold guardian in earthen form. Runes half-buried in the soil glow intermittently, spirals and falcon motifs pulsing in sync with your relics, as if the barrow senses the spark's approach and stirs from slumber. Local whispers from the fjord's elders, rooted in 9th century saga fragments like those in the saga of the Valshamr, describe such ridge barrows as guardian holds. Vanaheim sanctuaries where awakened sentinels echoes of Freyja's fierce kin-judged intruders seeking deeper boons. Their trials blending seer with the earth's unyielding memory. The pendant warms sharply, and you part the thorns with careful hands, their pricks drawing thin lines of blood that well like crimson oaths. The sparks sealing the wounds with a golden tingle before you slip inside. The interior unfolds as a descending corridor, walls packed earth reinforced with megalithic slabs, the air thick and cool, scented with loamy soil and a deeper metallic undercurrent like iron buried long in the vein. Torchless, you navigate by the seer's stone's glow, which reveals faded murals on the walls, processions of priestesses weaving threads around a central falcon, battles where women in war gowns felled shadow beasts, motifs recurring from the dream's visions. The passage opens into a vaulted chamber, vast and echoing, its ceiling lost in shadow. The floor a mosaic of polished slate inscribed with a vast spiral that mirrors the seer circle, yet dwarfs it. At the center squats the awakened guardian knot, a spectral figure like the priestess or crone, but a colossal boar of stone and vine, its tusks carved from quartz eyes. Twin ambers that blaze to life as you enter body, overgrown with thorny creepers that writhe like living veins. This is Hildisvíni's earthly kin, a barrow-wrought echo of Freyja's mount, guardian of the ridge's secrets, its form rumbling with a low vibrational growl that shakes pebbles from the walls. The boar stirs, stone grinding on stone, vines snapping taut as it rears slightly, amber eyes locking on you with primal intelligence. No voice issues from it, but its presence speaks volumes, a psychological press that weighs like the Einherjar's circle, testing the spark's flame against the earth's ancient grudge. The sonic textures envelop, deep rumbles, like Hildisvíni snorts, amplified through stone. Thorns scraping slate like claws on shields, the chamber's hush broken by your quickened breath. The guardian circles the mosaic, slowly tusks glinting, and the seer's stone flares unveiling visions on the spiral. Freyja astride her boar in thunderous charge, guarding Vanya relics from Aesir spies, a priestess binding the beast in seer to seal the barrow's power, her oath a blood price etched in amber. A quirky detail from the Vanir earthlore emerges. Preserved in esoteric runic poems from 10th century Danish inscriptions, such guardians held an anomalous function tied to Freyja's protective temperament. They could only be appeased by a thorn weave, a taboo ritual where the intruder offered a lock of hair woven with their deepest vow, fueling the boar's vines to either bind the unworthy in eternal thorns or release a buried boon, often scarring the soul with visions of unfulfilled oaths if the intent faltered. You feel the demand instinctively, the spark urging compliance, the relics humming in anticipation. The boar halts before you, lowering its massive head, tusks framing the mosaic's heart, where a shallow depression cradles a cluster of amber shards, remnants of tears like the heart waiting to be kindled. Kneeling, you draw a thorn from your sleeve, its prick a fresh oath, and sever a lock of your hair. Weaving it with words spoken from the core, by Freyja's enduring flame, I vow to share her grace with the forsaken, mending the fjord's quiet fractures as she mended mine. The weave drops into the depression, the spark channeling forth in a golden surge that ignites the ambers, flames leaping blue and fierce. The boar rears fully now, vines lashing the air, and the chamber responds, walls trembling murals animating in flickering light visions. Cascading, your cabin is a hearth for wanderers' village bonds, tightening like the war gown's links, but shadowed by a greater call, threads pulling toward the fjord's northern reaches where a storm gathers unnaturally. The guardian bellows, a thunderous roar that shakes the slate, vines coiling around the weave without crushing it. The taboo activates. Thorns pierce the offering, drawing symbolic blood that feeds the flames. Unearthing a profound truth, the spark's light has woven you into the fate's greater tapestry, not as solitary bearer but as conduit, your vows binding you to guide others through their veils. A price of deepened purpose that aches like growing roots. The boar stills amber eyes dimming to approval, and the vines part revealing a hidden alcove behind the mosaic. A pedestal holding a thorn crown of woven gold and quartz humming with power, a new relic, the thorn crown of Freyja's, oath to amplify the boon's reach in communal rites. The guardian settles back, stone form inert once more. But its echo joins Hildisvíni in your mind, a watchful sentinel for the paths ahead. You claim the crown, its weight light, yet resolute, the spark brighter. Now with the earth's guardianship, a boon refined by thorn and vow, promising strength and shared burdens. The chamber quiets, the mosaic spiral glowing faintly as you retrace the corridor, emerging under a canopy of stars that wheel with renewed vigor. The ridge overlooks the fjord village, lights twinkling like Einherjar's feasts, but the seer's stone stirs unveiling. A northern storm on the horizon, dark clouds roiling, naturally lightning forking in patterns like knotted winds drawing toward a cluster of offshore isles shrouded in perpetual mist. In the barrow's thorned trial, with the guardian appeased and Freyja's crown crowning your vows, what storm-veiled enigma on the northern isles summons the boon's amplified light to navigate the fjord's tempestuous call? The northern storm brews on the horizon like a god's unspoken grudge. Dark clouds roiling over the fjord's isles, lightning etching jagged runes across the sky that mirror the thorn crown's woven gold. You stand at the ridge's crest, the barrow's entrance sealed behind you in a whisper of settling earth, the guardian's rumble fading to the night's natural hush. Freyja's spark burns steady in your core, amplified by the crown's weight on your brow light, as a vow yet anchoring you to the fates. Greater weave its quartz thorns pricking just enough to remind every boon carries its quiet price. The twin feathers and falcon pendant nestle warm in your pocket. The seer stone unveiling glimpses of the tempest ahead, shadowed figures on mist-shrouded shores. Threads of destiny pulling like tides toward revelations yet unwoven. Hildisvíni's echo lingers in your stride, a phantom boar's push against the wind. While the village below twinkles with hearthlights, a constellation of mortal oaths, calling you homeward, even as the storm summons outward. Days blend into weeks, under the fjord's rhythmic tides, your cabin no longer a solitary hollow, but a nexus the sparks flame drawing wanderers to its door like moths to Sesrumnia's feasts. Harold arrives first, pipe in hand, eyes sharp with the curiosity of one who senses veils thinning. That storm came and went like a fever dream, he says, over shared mead. His tales of lost ships, now laced with your subtle guidance. The crown's power weaving truths into his words, mending the elders. Quiet regrets for paths untaken. The village girl, Ira, with her longing eyes and fisher's calluses, seeks you next, her heart adrift like ochre's winds. You share the pendant's warmth, its amber glow kindling her resolve to sail beyond the inlet's old fears. Her farewell avow renewed under the reforming stars. Word spreads through the fjord's hamlets, whispers of the flame-bearer who unravels mists and knots, turning isolation into shared grace. You venture to the northern isles under calmer skies, the storm's enigma yielding to the boon's light. A hidden cove where Vanir relics surface from sunken barrows, echoes of priestesses long silenced their seer, threads binding you to a council of sea shades who test the crown's thorns with trials of wave and whisper. Each crossing refines the spark Freyja's unyielding love, evolving into a communal fire, mending fractures in the waking world as she mended hers in the dream. Loki's sly chuckle haunts the edges, a reminder that tricks linger in every weave. But the Norn ring's balance holds, the guardian's vow anchoring your steps. Nights find you by the cabin hearth, the wooden bird from your father perched watchful, its carved eyes reflecting the aurora's dance outside. The amber heart remains on the mantle, inert but cherished, a relic of the summons that bridged realms. Freyja's motifs recur in quiet ways, a falcon wheeling over the fjord at dawn. The river's gray flow mirrored in rain-slick paths, stars shifting to omen new beginnings. The psychological depths of the labyrinth have scarred and strengthened you through river's erosion, a deeper empathy. The tempests howl a resilience against doubt. You are no god, no Einherjar, but a conduit, Freyja's remnant, a bridge for the forsaken, turning personal grace into the fjord's quiet revolution. As autumn gales sweep the cliffs, carrying the scent of salt and pine, you gaze northward once more, the isle's mists parting to reveal a distant glow, a new threshold, perhaps, where fates await another weave. The thorn crown rests light, the spark eternal. In the god's vast tapestry, your thread endures, not as hero or wanderer, but as mender oaths, living in every cut and mend. The world unfolds under realigned stars, grief shifting to grace, and the journey, like Okar's winds, circles ever onward.